to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nub. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still lights of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
I'm talking about Shabaka'S going crazy. People going crazy in these motherfuckers. Run that shit back, man.
But it means nothing. Nothing about a woman on the day. Man made the car. Man made the train to carry the heavy load. Man made the electrolyte to take us out of the dark. Man made the boat for the water like the 7 million. Man thinks about a little bit of baby girl and a baby boy. And man makes them happy because man makes them sorry. But after man make everything we can, do you know that man makes money? To buy from other men. This is a man
Greetings, Black family. Greetings. Thank y'all for tuning into a special edition of Shabaka'S Black Experience Enhanced on this President's Day 2025. This is a special edition of Shabaka'S Black Experience Enhanced, Season 10, Episode 5 of Shabaka'S Black Experience Enhanced. President's Day and Huey P. Newton edition. Today would have been Huey P. Newton's 83rd or 83rd birthday. So RIP, rest in power to him. We are going live on Monday opposed to Tuesday this week, and we will be discussing the life and times of Huey P. Newton and the original Black Panther Party for Self-Defense and the history of the U.S. president since it's President's Day. Please join us on StreamYard, YouTube Frontline Black News. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Frontline Black News and the Revolutionary Agenda. Put the links in the description. Alright, so I had a cue set up that I was going to play of several videos giving the history of the Black Panther Party. So let me see if I can pull those up for you. In the meantime, greetings, Lady Chase. Say hi to the people.
Hi.
Okay.
I don't know what you want me to say considering what we just went through. Hi, I guess. News to me about this little show just 10 minutes ago, so I was trying to get oriented with what we're discussing, which I really wasn't paying attention to. So now that I'm paying attention, yeah, we should celebrate this too. As far as the President's Day, fuck him, and fuck the one before him, and the one before him was him, so fuck him too. Right?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't really give a damn right now about the president as I'm watching all the nonsense shit going on. I got a little cue together for myself. I didn't know this was gonna happen, so I guess I have to put my Monday adventure.
Welcome to Revolution and Ideology.
Other than that, I think this is gonna be a pretty productive show. We don't know where Shabak is, but whatever.
He must be asleep.
So on his own program. But like this is gonna be all right. So I guess just now show some clips, and he may ask me for my opinion. I may give him one. We'll see. We'll soon find out.
Yeah.
Carry on.
We will see. All right. So this first one is a quick history of the Black Panther. Yes, Free Huey. This first one is a clip of the quick history of the Black Panthers. Unfortunately, it's being narrated by a cracker.
Unfortunately.
But,
That shit is fucked up.
Pay attention to the message.
That right
Not
there
the
in itself is
messenger.
fucked up. That's fucked up.
This is Nick. We promised our audience that we would do a super short history of the Black Panthers. So this is that. Buckle your seatbelts because we are going to fly. The Black Panthers were founded in Oakland.
Let me do fair use. Fair use, people too, fair use. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Let's go.
In response to police brutality from an overwhelmingly white police force. Only 2.5% of the Oakland police force was Black at the time. I wish I had to explain to you what police brutality was and how it unequally impacts Black communities, but unfortunately, it's still going on today. Bobby Seale and Huey Newton decided that they were going to patrol the police themselves. Huey Newton studied the California state law in detail and learned that it was legal to open carry loaded weapons as long as they maintained a certain distance and did not interfere with the police officers and their work. They purchased bulk quantities of Chairman Mao's Little Red Book, and they resold them to UC Berkeley students. They took the profits from this little endeavor, and they purchased 2 shotguns and began following police squad cars throughout the neighborhood. They officially founded the Black Panther Party of Self-Defense in Oakland in October of 1966. They began their police patrols a few months later. You can imagine how these police patrols were depicted in the media. They're depicted as violent aggression, but it's important to note that the Panthers' presence at police stops never resulted in violence from either the Panthers nor the police. This will change later. That's not to say that the Panthers didn't become violent in other ways, but violence never resulted from the actual police patrols. As the Panthers' numbers began to grow, local police departments went to Republican State Congressman Don Mulford, and they urged him to author a bill making it a misdemeanor to carry a loaded weapon in public. The Panthers heard about this, and they decided to appear at the state capitol in Sacramento when the bill was being voted on to protest. And they did this with their guns in hand. While they are trying to find the spectator area of the Capitol building, they inadvertently walk out onto the floor of the state assembly with their weapons in their hands. There are iconic photos of this happening. Now, you can imagine the field day that the media has with this event. The media coverage of this single event led to the Panthers becoming nationally famous basically overnight. The bill eventually did pass, and it became known as the Mulford Act. It was enacted in 1967 with the support of then California Governor Ronald Reagan and, get this, the National Rifle Association. It's amazing how opinions on gun control change when those arming themselves are black. I want to stress that again. California Governor Ronald Reagan, with the help of the NRA, helped to pass the Mulford Act in California, making it illegal to open carry loaded weapons in public. I also want to stress it is still illegal to open carry in the state of California as a result of the Mulford Act due to the oppression of the Black Panthers and their rights. This newfound popularity of the Panthers inspires them to open a headquarters in Oakland, and they begin publishing the Black Panther newspaper, where they lay out their 10-point platform. This is what they are after. 1. We want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black community. Number 2, we want full employment for our people. Number 3, we want an end to the robbery by the white man of our Black community. Number 4, we want decent housing, fit for shelter of human beings. Number 5, we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present-day society. Number 6, we want all Black men to be exempt from military service. Number 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of Black people. Number 8, we want freedom for all Black men held in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails. Number 9, we want all Black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in court by a jury of their peer group or people from their Black communities, as defined by the Constitution of the United States. And number 10, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. They also established 26 rules for every official member of the party. I won't read all of them. Here are a few. Number 1, no party member can have narcotics or weed in his possession while doing party work. Number 2, any party member found shooting narcotics will be expelled from this party. Number 3, no party member can be drunk while doing party work. Number 4, no party member will violate rules relating to office work, general meetings of the Black Panther Party, and meetings of the Black Panther Party elsewhere. Number 5, no party member will use, point, or fire a weapon of any kind unnecessarily or accidentally at anyone. Number 8, no party member will commit any crimes against other party members or Black people at all and cannot steal or take from the people, not even a needle or a piece of thread. Number 9, when arrested, Black Panther members will give only name, address, and will sign nothing. Legal first aid must be understood by all party members. Upon being released from prison, Eldridge Cleaver joins the Panthers in 1967. He was quite a bit older than most of the rest of the members of the party. In 1967, Cleaver was 32 years old and had spent 15 of those years behind bars. In 1967, Bobby Seale is only 25 years old, and Huey Newton is 31. In October 1967, Huey Newton is pulled over by Oakland police and a shootout ensues. 2 police officers and Newton are all shot. 1 police officer dies, and Newton is handcuffed in the hospital and charged with voluntary manslaughter. From jail, Huey Newton professes his innocence, and this leads to Free Huey demonstrations that become a movement in themselves. In the aftermath of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Eldridge Cleaver leads 11 other Panthers in an ambush on police officers. In the ensuing shootout, Cleaver and 17-year-old Bobby Hutton surrender. Upon surrendering, the police shoot Bobby Hutton 12 times. He immediately becomes a martyr of the movement. 1,500 people attended his funeral, and 2,000 people attended the rally following the funeral. Actor Marlon Brando delivered a eulogy, and his death at the hands of the police garners an incredible amount of support for the Panthers. Eldridge Cleaver is charged with murder after the incident, and he flees the country. First to Cuba, then to Algeria, where he sets up up an international chapter of the Black Panthers, which receives support from many countries. This results in a large influx of new members. Many of the new members are college students, which leads to some tension within the party. The original urban Black membership wants to maintain its street image, while others want the party to adopt a more mainstream image. It's important to note the importance of the Black Panther image in recruiting new members. Martin Luther King Jr. was always mainstream in his rhetoric and attire. He wore church suits. Malcolm X, while his rhetoric was more radical, his image was still conservative. He still wore suits. The Panthers were radical in both rhetoric and image. This was more relatable to poor Blacks, and this is one of the factors that led to them being so popular. The name of the party was officially shortened from the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense to the Black Panther Party. It's at this point that the party starts focusing on its quote-unquote survival programs. The Panthers create free breakfast programs for children, clothing and food drives, free clinics, free sickle cell testing programs, free self-defense training, free classes on politics and economics, free drug and alcohol rehabilitation program. By this time, mid to late 1960s, party membership is over 10,000, and there are chapters in Atlanta, Baltimore, Boston, Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, Denver, Detroit, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Newark, New Orleans, New York City, Omaha, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, San Diego, San Francisco, Seattle, Toledo, and Washington, D.C. The Black Panther newspaper is the most widely read newspaper in the United States, with a readership of over 250,000 per week. In 1968, the Panthers breakfast program provided 20,000 meals for children in 19 different communities. Due to their growing popularity, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover attacked the Black Panther Party publicly. He authors an article that gets published in national newspapers in which he says, quote, "The Black Panther Party, without question, represents the greatest threat to the internal security of the country." This leads us to COINTELPRO. We can't possibly do justice to the entire COINTELPRO program in this episode. Just know that COINTEL stands for counterintelligence, and it was a program created by the FBI to deal with quote-unquote dissidents in the United States. But frankly, the majority of its activities targeted the Black Panther Party. J. Edgar Hoover, director of the FBI, sends a memo to all FBI field offices. This memo says, "The purpose of this new counterintelligence endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of Black nationalists, hate-type organizations and groupings, their leadership, spokesmen, membership, and supporters, and to counter their propensity for violence and civil disorder. You are urged to take an enthusiastic and imaginative approach to this new counterintelligence endeavor, and the Bureau will be pleased to entertain any suggestions or techniques you may recommend." Here's just one example of some activities from an official FBI memo. It says, San Francisco has submitted a counterintelligence proposal which involves the mailing of expulsion letters to approximately 60 members of the Black Panther Party in various parts of the United States as a disruptive measure. The letters are to be prepared on Black Panther Party stationery with the simulated signature of a Black Panther Party national official. The laboratory has prepared similar reproductions of Black Panther Party stationery and official signatures in the past. As pointed out in this letter, we need additional information before going ahead with the preparation of the letters. So their plan is to send letters to different Black Panther Party members on official Black Panther Party stationery, telling them that they have been expelled from the party to create confusion and disorganization within the party. In its lifetime, the COINTEL program was responsible for 290 official activities. Of those, 245 targeted the Black Panthers specifically. In 1968, Bobby Seale attended the Democratic National Convention, where he delivered a speech. He gets arrested and charged with conspiracy to cross state lines to induce a riot. In an effort to stamp out all Black Panther activity, the FBI worked with New York City Police Department and arrested 21 members, including all of the leadership of the New York City chapter. The police claimed that the Panthers had been involved in a plot to bomb police stations and other locations throughout the city. These arrested activists become known as the Panther 21. At Bobby Seale's trial in Chicago in October 1969, his attorney was ill and could not arrive in time for the trial. Seale attempted to represent himself, but the judge refused, having him gagged and chained to his chair. He gets charged with contempt of court 16 times and is sentenced to 4 years in prison. All other charges were dropped. Remember, he was charged with crossing state lines to incite a riot. All of those charges get dropped, and he is instead charged with 16 contempt of court charges as a result of fighting against the gagging that the judge ordered. As word of this gets out, huge demonstrations begin to take place outside of the courthouse during the trial in Chicago. This leads us to the rise of Fred Hampton. During the demonstrations outside of the courthouse, Fred Hampton, who at the time was 21 years old, addresses the crowd. He was the chairman of the Illinois chapter and deputy chairman of the national chapter of the Black Panther Party. He emphasizes revolution. He emphasizes racial unity. Due to his charisma and incredible organizing skills, he quickly rises to national prominence. Hampton establishes what he names the Rainbow Coalition, which is a coalition of diverse racial and ethnic working class activist groups working together, including the Students for a Democratic Society, the Brown Berets, the Red Guard Party, and even Chicago gangs who agree to maintain peace and work together. This Rainbow Coalition becomes a target of FBI activity. The Black Panther Party establishes what they call Panther Pads. Panther members left home and moved in together for the safety of their families. They were very organized for security, cleaning, cooking, etc., and building a community in the movement. The FBI manipulated this situation. FBI informants gave Panthers guns. They then told the police that they were armed and should be attacked. So the FBI is furnishing them with weapons. Then they're telling the local police forces that they are armed and dangerous. The key example of this going down is when local police, having been giving a layout of the apartment of Fred Hampton and the other Black Panthers, invade the apartment in the middle of the night with the intent to assassinate Fred Hampton. The police fire 90 shots into the apartment. Later investigations find that the Black Panthers fired once, most likely accidental, when the guard who was guarding the door was shot and his gun went off. It turns out that Hampton's personal bodyguard was an FBI informant. Like I said, he provided the floor plans and a key to the Black Panther pad. He also is one that sold guns to the Black Panther members, guns provided to him by the FBI. The police immediately provide an account of events. They say there must have been 6 or 7 of them firing. The firing must have gone on 10 or 12 minutes. If 200 shots were exchanged, that was nothing. It's a miracle that not one policeman was killed. They recreate a life-size model of the apartment and have the raiding officers act out the raid for national television. The problem is they did not secure the scene after they left, and the media and other community members are invited by the Black Panther Party to enter into the apartment and to see for themselves what went down. And they immediately notice contradictions in the police version versus the evidence they see with their own eyes in the apartment. A federal investigation concluded that the police immediately shot and killed Mark Clark. He's the guard on the door. They most likely shot him through the door before it had ever been opened. They then enter the apartment and begin unloading through the walls in the direction of Fred Hampton's bed. They find Hampton laying in his bed unconscious but still breathing, drag him into the hallway, and shoot him 2 times in the head at point-blank range. The surviving Panthers all testify that they hear one officer say, "He's good and dead now." Now the question, how many shots were fired? Like I said earlier, the federal investigation concludes that 1 shot at most, even this can't be confirmed, came from the Black Panthers, and it came from Clark, who was shot dead, presumably through the door before it was even opened. He was holding a shotgun. When he was shot, the shotgun fired and went through the ceiling. The police fired between 82 and 99 rounds into the apartment. Like I said, the Panthers shot 1, accidentally, into the ceiling. No police are ever charged. The families of Hampton and Clark, who are the 2 that are killed during the raid, charged the police department with wrongful death. After a 13-year lawsuit, the police department settles for $1.8 million. Fred Hampton immediately becomes a martyr for the movement. SWAT in Los Angeles raids Black Panther Party headquarters on December 8, 1969. This was the first deployment of the newly formed Los Angeles SWAT team. They enter the headquarters at 4:30 a.m. with a no-knock warrant. The standoff lasts for 5 hours and involved over 300 LAPD officers. 6 Panthers and 3 officers are wounded. Eventually, the Panthers surrender. Many Panthers are arrested on many charges, including conspiracy to murder police officers, which carried a life sentence. After a trial, the jury determines that the Panthers were acting in self-defense, and all were found not guilty. Now remember that Huey Newton had been charged in his shootout with police. In 1970, all of his charges are dropped, and he is freed from prison. He immediately becomes an icon for the movement. Though it's around this time that the Black Panther Party begins its downfall. People become afraid to join the party because they know that the FBI has infiltrated and were everywhere, and the police were arresting for no reason, and even if found not guilty, they'd spend time in jail. Huey Newton expels the Panther 21, who are still in jail at this time. The legal fees of their defense were becoming too much for the Black Panther Party to support. Eldridge Cleaver sides with the Panther 21, and the party becomes split between Huey Newton, who wants to focus on social services, and Eldridge Cleaver, who wants to lead a more radical movement. The schism is between those who saw the party as a vehicle for social service and those who viewed it as a vehicle to overthrow the United States government. J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI pounce on this opportunity. The FBI intensifies the internal conflict and creates an atmosphere of paranoia. This leads to infighting among the Panthers themselves. The Panthers begin more political activities. Bobby Seale ran for mayor of Oakland in 1970, and Elaine Brown ran for city council. The Panthers consolidate and close down all chapters other than Oakland in order to focus on the election. They register between 20,000 and 50,000 people to vote. Bobby Seale loses the election. They lose their national presence as a result of the consolidation completely. Huey Newton essentially at this point kind of goes off the rails. He's suffering from mental health issues. He becomes abusive and addictive to drugs. People began leaving the party en masse. The party ceases to exist by 1982. There's more history here to its downfall, but you get the idea. In the end, Eldridge Cleaver returns to the United States to face his murder charge. He avoids jail time by accepting a plea deal to reduce the charge to assault. He becomes a born-again Christian and political conservative. He died in 1988. Huey Newton is murdered by gang members in Oakland in 1989 while trying to buy drugs. Bobby Seale ran for mayor of Oakland in 1873 and lost in a runoff election. He is still an activist living in California. As of this episode, he's 84 years old. In short, the Black Panther Party severely underestimated the power and influence and the resources that law enforcement at a local, state, and federal level would use to try to eradicate the movement. The COINTEL program created by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover relentlessly targeted the Panthers, oftentimes, most of the times illegally, and eventually led to the downfall of the Panther Party.
Damn. COINTELPRO. Alright, so that's the first one. And there's the second one.
Hey, Cypher here. I wanted to try an experiment. Today, I'm releasing the reality section for a film review as a standalone video a few weeks before the full thing. Maybe I can do that for other ones in the future. Tell me what you think in the comments, but for this one, I'm talking about the Black Panthers. It's an important topic that isn't easy to cover. The historiography is fairly new because what came before is riddled with this information, but it is worth understanding the history of the Panthers. Also, I want to thank Lynn Burnett for proofreading this script, since it is such a difficult topic to cover. He runs a public history project called Cross-Cultural Solidarity, dedicated to making scholarly and primary sources available on racial justice history. Please check out the website linked in the description.
One more thing!
And apparently, the algorithmic gods wish to smite this video. So please consider donating to my Patreon or through buying merch. That allows me to hit topics like this, despite YouTube not wanting me to talk about the Black Panthers, whom they deem a violent criminal organization. Which under certain interpretations may be true, but that's antiquated to the point of chauvinism. It's a real shame that YouTube so often takes such a deeply conservative position, especially for educational content, because they really ought to support learning about the Black Panther Party. After the civil rights movement had accomplished its greatest achievement with the passage of both the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act a year later, the movement lost much of its political solemnity. The virtual leader of the movement was Martin Luther King, and he sacrificed public approval when he denounced the Vietnam War. Making matters worse was the lack of significant progress in material conditions for black people. As the US deindustrialized, the premium jobs from the 1950s golden age of capitalism evaporated. which black people felt the economic crunch more than white people. King turned his attention to economic equality and met fierce resistance from his once staunch allies in the white North and West.
If we can spend $35 billion a year to fight an ill-considered war in Vietnam, our nation can spend billions of dollars to put God's children on their own 2 feet.
People's belief in nonviolence fell precipitously. Malcolm X had long criticized King's civil disobedience for disempowering black people, instead encouraging black empowerment and resistance to white supremacy, often including calls for violent retaliation. Only a couple weeks before the Selma protests, Malcolm's former organization, a black nationalist group called the Nation of Islam, assassinated him. This did not silence his ideas, for only a year later, 2 California college students would take up his mantle. California had a very contentious gubernatorial election that year. Due to white-only covenants, black people were ghettoized in urban centers, not only in California but throughout the nation. Governor Pat Brown had outlawed discriminatory housing in 1963. A ballot measure called Prop 14 tried to overthrow that, but the California Supreme Court overruled it. So Ronald Wilson Reagan ran on behalf of overthrowing the Rumford Fair Housing Act, after having supported Barry Goldwater's run a couple years prior, especially his opposition to the Civil Rights Act. Even former Republican governor and then Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren denounced Reagan's racial politics, but he won the 1966 election anyways. Fears of a white backlash to the civil rights movement were high. That same year, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale formed a political org called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. They wrote a 10-point platform that would drive the party's goals for the next decade. Their listed virtues were land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. Some of these included such radical notions as calling the state an occupying force, segregating juries, releasing all black prisoners, and a racial exemption from military service. They required members to act as Marxist-Leninist vanguards of a coming revolution, though, like with many such radicals, not with much clear statements of what that revolution would entail. But of immediate concern was Point 7, which called for an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people, other people of color, and all oppressed people inside the United States. That self-defense part of their name was of primary importance. Panthers organized as militants, purposefully evoking revolutionary movements from Africa by dressing in black leather and black berets while carrying shotguns. As early as October of 1966, they began counter-patrolling cops in Oakland. They'd arrive wherever police roamed around the Bay Area with their own armament. This led to a number of confrontations, which either side claimed the other was the aggressors. Nevertheless, open carry was perfectly legal in California, so the legislature decided to put an end to that. The Mulford Act outlawed open carry in the state. Before it could be passed in May of 1967, the Panthers made their most provocative showing yet in order to protest its passage.
The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense calls upon the American people in general and the black people in particular to take full note of the racist California legislature, which is now considering legislation aimed at keeping the black people disarmed and powerless at the very same time that racist police agencies throughout the country are intensifying the terror, brutality, murder, and repression of black people. At the same time that the American government is waging a racist war of genocide in Vietnam, the concentration camps in which Japanese Americans were interned during World War II are being renovated and expanded. Since America has historically reserved the most barbaric treatment for non-white people, we are forced to conclude that these concentration camps are being prepared for black people who are determined to gain their freedom by any means necessary.
They went into the Capitol in Sacramento, well armed, and actually made it into the Assembly's chamber before being forced to leave. Again, this was legal.
California Penal Code Section 12020 through 12027, and also the Second Amendment of the Constitution guarantees the citizen a right to bear arms on public property.
But it scared people. Newspapers even called it an invasion. Soon, the act was on Governor Reagan's desk.
Well, I think it's a ridiculous way to try and solve the problems that have to be solved among people of goodwill, and there's certainly nothing that can be done in the line of goodwill when Americans have guns with even the implied idea that those guns might be directed against other Americans. But I would think that some of the bills that have been suggested, such as not carrying a loaded weapon on a city street or in town, this might certainly be a good one. There is absolutely no reason why out on the street today civilians should be carrying a loaded weapon.
Counter patrols were now illegal, but Panthers remained armed in private, and white Californians remained scared. While the Black Panther Party maintained its revolutionary rhetoric and use of intimidating imagery, they began a series of community outreach programs, such as free breakfasts for kids and clinics that specialized in ailments that disproportionately afflicted black communities, though all of that would not start until 1969. These programs were a response to the Mulford Act and were meant to spread Panther ideology with outreach, which worked quite well. They quickly gained community support in Oakland, and Panther chapters spread throughout the U.S. With their open Marxism, they eventually forged ties with Cuba, North Korea, China, North Vietnam, and even had an international headquarters in Algeria because they supported a Pan-African liberation movement. This gave the FBI what they wanted. So in August of 1967, just a few months after the events in Sacramento, they opened up a counterintelligence program, or COINTELPRO, on what they called black extremists. They would use whatever means possible to disrupt black power and civil rights organizations, including disinformation to sow distrust between the organizations, planting evidence to get them arrested, and infiltrating them with informants. J. Edgar Hoover would later say, "The Black Panther Party, without question, represents the greatest threat to the internal security of the country." This was the worst political repression the U.S. perpetrated during the late 1960s and early 70s, and it would cause much violence to come. But the Panthers had more immediate concerns than COINTELPRO in 1967. A few months later, Huey Newton got in an altercation with police who decided to arrest him after a routine pullover, despite him being freshly off probation. Though it's disputed, witness testimony indicates that Newton tore one of the cops' guns from its holster and shot both of them before one of them managed to shoot him in the gut. One died, and Newton would be in and out of jail for years. The movement to free Huey galvanized support for Black Power just in time for another tragedy to bring ardent civil rights protesters to change their faith in nonviolence. An assassin killed Martin Luther King in April of 1968. A series of riots broke out across the country, and King's mode of organized protest died with him. The Panthers capitalized on this, even bringing many members of the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee, or SNCC, over to their side, though leaders like Stokely Carmichael had already been moving in that direction. During the Olympic Games in Mexico, a couple American winners held up their black-gloved fists atop the podium in a live broadcast for all to see, the symbol of Black Power. The Panther Party itself grew to around 5,000 official members across the U.S. in 1969. Interestingly enough, the membership was majority female. Women took a prominent role in the party. While some chapters had issues with misogynists, the opposite was true for most. They were leaders within the organization, pushed for sexual equality outside of it, including equal pay for equal work, and the end of legal subjugation after marriage, such as how married women couldn't open bank accounts, and forged links with Black Power feminists like Angela Davis, a communist professor who was not a Panther. These links made the relatively tiny membership in the party into a far greater influence on American racial politics, and women primarily forged that. Chicago was the most successful of the locations that year. Their leader, Fred Hampton, had brought together what he called a rainbow coalition that unified various multiracial gangs and leftists in the city. It successfully ended much of the violence in that city, but it represented a radical and armed underclass. That was so fearful that Hoover ordered the FBI to prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. A police raid killed Hampton and another Panther. This was essentially an assassination, given that the only possible shot fired from the Panthers was by a man who was shot at the entrance as he was dying. This was the most prominent of all the COINTELPRO influence in the Black Panther Party. The security chief of the Illinois chapter was an FBI plant who provided the plans for Hampton's apartment. There were 3 other informants in that chapter alone. That's how severely COINTELPRO affected the Panthers. It was riddled with snitches. Some simply provided information, where others went far further to undermine the organization. This turned Panther violence inward, especially after key leadership was virtually eliminated. Fred Hampton was assassinated. Bobby Seale helped organize the 1968 protest in Chicago, which led to a trial and him being held in prison for contempt of court, then later indicted for supposedly ordering the execution of a member in New Haven. Huey Newton was in and out of jail for murder. Their Minister of Information fled the country from attempted murder charges. And even Angela Davis had to go on the run because she supposedly helped some Panthers get firearms later used in a police shootout. On top of all that, a conflict was brewing between the eastern and western branches of the party. The Panthers' constant search for snitches led to several murders in their ranks. The organization couldn't keep discipline either. Despite rules specifically stating those on duty could not use drugs, it was commonplace, making the Panther Party an easier target with Nixon's new war on drugs. Leaders would impose harsh punishments for violations, such as beatings. Because of this violence, there was internal pressure to fight back against the police, hence why there were so many clashes. This was the core of the rupture forming. Some chapters wanted more militancy and less focus on the 1969 programs of free clinics and food for black people. A split off from the Black Panther Party formed alongside a black nationalist group called the Republic of New Africa. They called themselves the Black Liberation Army and were explicitly terrorists. Some saw it as a paramilitary arm of the Panthers, but it was technically a distinct organization, though there were certainly ties. They went on a series of bank robberies, bombings, hijackings, and assassinations. This was bad enough, but Huey Newton was falling into drug-induced mania. On top of all of this, 1970 saw the beginning of a precipitous decline in membership. The demise of the Panthers was not merely from COINTELPRO repression, for the worst of it had been a year prior, when the Panthers were at their most successful. Instead, as one historian says, as blacks won greater electoral representation, government employment, affirmative action opportunities, as well as elite college and university access, the Vietnam War and military draft wound down, and the United States normalized relations with revolutionary governments abroad, it became impossible for Panthers to continue advocating armed confrontation with the state and still maintain Allied support. The party, racked by external repression and internal fissures, quickly and disastrously unraveled. The brief couple years of Black Panther favor were over. In 1971, the rupture in leadership came out in the open. Newton said Oakland would completely focus on its outreach programs, while Cleaver wanted to push for more self-defense. The East stayed loyal to Cleaver and the West to Newton. Somebody killed a Panther in Harlem, and the New York chapter blamed Westerners. So they captured a Westerner named Sam Napier and tortured him to death. That year, COINTELPRO was exposed by a break-in, and the FBI had to curtail their political repression, but they had published enough disinformation about the Black Panther Party to sour their reputation. Since the U.S. had been moving towards détente, the Panthers could not maintain international favor. In '72, Algerian police cut off the Panther embassy. Newton got in one too many fights and possibly murder, so he fled the country, eventually landing in Cuba. They maintained some connections to communist dictatorships, but most of their international acclaim was gone. Bobby Seale tried to bring the organization back to legitimacy by running for mayor of Oakland, and he actually got 40% of the vote. But that was the last thrashing of a dying system. The Black Panther Party remained a small Oakland fixture for the next few years, helping register black people to vote and maintaining a much reduced outreach program. They kept dwindling in support until finally ending in 1982. The Panthers had a lasting impact, both for how their outreach programs could uplift a community and how Black Power radicalism can function. But they simultaneously were a movement of their time.
No. The original Black Panther Party started in Lowndes County, Alabama, when it was just political.
Either way, now the factions are all allegedly are all over the South. It's just broken up into different little gun clubs and Panther whatever. But as far as them keeping the same bylaws, man, this shit's been like it's been squashed. The recruitment shit and the people that within it is like probably some sort of savory, salacious inner shit.
Yeah.
It really has nothing to do with the work. And then people doing the work is like few and far between. Like, for example, give you a perfect example of kids going out here in Colorado, right? Denver. I would say everybody.
Here it is.
It don't exist anymore. It's fucking everybody's asleep. No matter how much I want to wake them up, they don't want to come out because they're too old or whatever the fuck their excuses, right? And
They are. They're in their late 60s, early 70s.
Right, but still, voice is a voice, right?
Yeah.
So that's one portion. The second portion is like with all the way this nuanced motherfucking what do you call them, millennial plus on, right?
Yeah.
Like
Gen
in the
Z.
20 somethings or whatever.
Yeah,
We
that's
can't
Gen
have a
Z.
conversation with them about this. We talking old nigga shit. They ain't hearing it,
That's your
and they don't
CJs.
wanna comply with anything. They even are fucking up. Like we look at certain gang members, we're like, not my type of crip.
Right.
Why? Because they fucking it all up, man. None of this shit
Right.
would be like motherfuckers would not be on Blacc or excuse me,
No
Adam 22.
jumper. Oh my God.
You know what I mean? If they were really practicing the right politics, they would never go on that shit.
Right.
Why? Because what's said in the street or done in the street stays in the street, does in the street.
Right.
That's what we're talking about the shit, right? But now everybody's just a book waiting to happen.
Oh my
So
God.
that's what I'm saying, and it's kind of tainted and ugly, and there's no faith in it because what has kept it going or what has kept it going was the desire for it, and now like watch as shit gets uglier, watch how many people are wanting to go back to the same bylaws of the Panther movement and what it actually meant, minus the fucking infighting, snitching, and fucking agent like behavior. You know what I mean? You should be suspicious of everything. Ask questions. Yeah, I feel like a lot of shit like now is.
I'm gonna drop the link for
Not
you,
like that.
MD, so you can come up here.
You come up here with the dog. It's a wrap.
Why come we can't hear anything? How come? Yeah, I already got that one.
Selective.
100% correct. What was the RNA? The Revolutionary
Forgot.
National.
What was RNA again? Remind us of the acronym. So many motherfucking acronyms.
We put the LCFO.
And that too.
It's talking in code around here.
You can look out.
Oh, you're on the road.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. You driving them big trucks.
We don't want to see your dog.
Got the dog on the road with you.
And,
Where they got you now?
drop that
You still in
motherfucker
the
off
South?
over here in Aurora.
Yeah, when you coming to Denver.
Yeah, okay, you're right.
Oh, yeah, the
still
Republic
there?
of New Africa. Yeah, it's still there. We actually know one of the presidents.
We know a couple people from there
Yeah.
that are still active.
I wish we could get his ass up here. Let me hit him up real quick.
Let's not keep going because it'll take too long. Let's stop to have a 40-minute dialogue. Carry on. What's the next one?
The ones who supplied the weapons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't get me started because I just was talking about the motherfucking immigrants about this same shit. Because I'm always saying, where you think they got it from? Where you think it come from?
We want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people.
Well, perhaps more than anything else, the Black Panthers stood for the right of black people to defend themselves against white violence, even if it meant carrying weapons and using them in self-defense. But it also brought violent conflict with police. And by 1969, at least 28 Panthers had been killed in shootouts with police. Not many people know that the Panthers got some of their first weapons from a man named Richard Aoki. And nobody knew that Aoki was an informant for the FBI. A former FBI agent had heard that I was doing research, then he contacted me. His name was Bernie Threadgill. And he says, "Hey, I know that guy." And he said, "Aoki was my informant. I developed him."
Oh, yeah, he was a character. He said, "I don't have any interest in communism." And I said, "Well, why don't you just go to some of the meetings and tell me who was there and what they talked about." So one thing led to another, and he became a real good informant.
Well, I had never heard of Richard Aoki before Bernie Threadgill told me about it. So I started to research who was Richard Aoki. Aoki was a prominent activist in the San Francisco Bay Area during the 60s.
Definitely, Richard was someone who looked at things politically. The impression I got was basically, if you become his friend, you know, he's like your friend for life, you know. And he was like that with most people, you know.
He had been very involved in the Third World Liberation Front strike at Berkeley in 1969. He was one of the most militant leaders of that strike. Aoki had also been involved in a group called the Asian American Political Alliance, one of the first Asian activist groups in the country. He'd also had a connection with the Black Panthers. Aoki was head of the Berkeley chapter of the Panthers and later became a field marshal in the Panthers. And it was known that he had given the Black Panthers guns. I knew from my research that he was a very smart and complex person. He had a fascinating history. A former FBI agent had heard that I was doing research, then he contacted me. His name was Bernie Threadgill. And he says, "Hey, I know that guy." And he said, "Aoki was my informant. I developed him."
Oh, yeah, he was a character. He said, "I don't have any interest in communism." And I said, "Well, why don't you just go to some of the meetings and tell me who was there and what they talked about." So one thing led to another, and he became a real good informant.
Well, I had never heard of Richard Aoki before Bernie Threadgill told me about him. So I started to research who was Richard Aoki. Aoki was a prominent activist in the San Francisco Bay Area during the 60s.
Definitely, Richard was someone who looked at things politically. The impression I got was basically, if you become his friend, you know, he's like your friend for life, you know. And he was like that with most people, you know.
He had been very involved in the Third World Liberation Front strike at Berkeley in 1969. He was one of the most militant leaders of that strike. Aoki had also been involved in a group called the Asian American Political Alliance, one of the first Asian activist groups in the country. He'd also had a connection with the Black Panthers. Aoki was head of the Berkeley chapter of the Panthers and later became a field marshal in the Panthers. And it was known that he had given the Black Panthers guns. I knew from my research that he was a very smart and complex person. He had a fascinating history. His family was interned during World War II. He'd grown up in West Oakland in a very rough neighborhood, predominantly Black and impoverished neighborhood. He was part of a gang. He was involved in a lot of petty crimes, co-valedictorian in his junior high school. When he was in the Army, he became a firearms expert. So I was really curious to know about this other side of his life.
I'm wondering if you remember a guy named Bernie Threadgill?
Bernie Threadgill?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
What I was told in my research that during this period of time you actually worked for the FBI.
They tell you that?
Bernie told me that.
He did?
He did.
Oh, that's interesting.
Informants were used when I was in the FBI. An informant would report on the inner workings of an organization. They can keep you up to date on the thinking of the leadership of the organization, whether it's going this way, that way. Someone like Aoki is perfect to be in a Black Panther Party because I understand he's Japanese. Hey, nobody's going to guess. He's in the Black Panther Party. Nobody's going to guess that he might be an informant.
Through his involvement in the socialist groups, Aoki established his political credentials and became known to other activists in the Bay Area. Aoki was a student at Merritt College, and that's where he met Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, who would go on to found the Black Panther Party. The Panthers at that time were very concerned about police brutality in Oakland. They wanted to end police brutality. And they had an idea that one way to do that would be community patrols of the police. And in these community patrols, members of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, if they saw police interacting with citizens,
there would be a Black Panther present with a camera and also an unloaded shotgun. The goal of that was to be an eyewitness to prevent any possibility of police brutality.
But they needed guns in order to do these patrols. So they went to Richard Aoki. We went to a third world brother we knew, a Japanese radical cat. He had guns. We told him that we wanted those guns to begin to institutionalize and let Black people know that we have to defend ourselves, as Malcolm X said we must. And Aoki did. He provided not only weapons, but weapons training. Threadgill had given me a detailed account of how he recruited Aoki as an informant, but I wanted to know more. In reviewing the records, there was a list of informants. Most of their names were blacked out, but for some reason, Richard Aoki's name had not been blacked out, and he was listed in the report as informant T2. Why was he arming the Panthers, and was the FBI involved in it? Under J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI had a secret operation called COINTELPRO, an acronym for Counterintelligence Program.
Hoover was very anxious to go after the Black Panther Party. The goal of the FBI was to, first of all, neutralize them.
Techniques ranged from sending false letters or planting negative news stories to trying to foment violence between the Panthers and other groups. The FBI also used informants as part of its COINTELPRO operation.
Committed suicide.
When Richard passed away, he had in his apartment 2 uniforms neatly.
Suicide and Russell Field Ferd wrote his obituary for the San Francisco Chronicle. Interesting. In 2009. Huh.
So that's it.
When Richard passed away, he had in his apartment 2 uniforms neatly pressed in his apartment. And one uniform was the Black Panther uniform. The other uniform that he had laid out and neatly pressed was his Army uniform. You know.
The FBI had released about 1,900 pages on various organizations that Aoki had been involved with, but it claimed it had no files on Richard Aoki himself. This was very strange because Aoki was a major political activist.
Aoki wouldn't even have to be a member of the party if he just knew Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, and he went out to lunch with them every day. They would have a main file, but to say they don't have a main file is ludicrous.
In my opinion, the FBI has a responsibility to the community to give a full accounting of what its relationship with Richard Aoki was, especially because Aoki played such an important role in arming the Black Panthers. One of the things I learned in my research is that Richard had actually worked for the FBI.
Oh, I was at
Well, he never mentioned this
No.
to you?
I mean, that's like a big surprise to me, you know, in terms of. I don't think I was ever heard any information, you know, as far as, you know, him even talking to the FBI. Yeah. So that's kind of a shocking thing for me to hear. Yeah. He pretty much compartmentalizes all his different parts of his life. You know, he has friends from this period, friends from that period, and then the you know, Asian American movement and Third World Strike period. You know.
Even his best friend was clueless.
Am I wrong?
I think you are.
Yeah. So, would you say it's untrue that you ever worked with the FBI or got paid by the FBI?
I would say it.
Yeah. And I'm trying to understand the complexities about it, and I think
it is complex.
I believe it is, and
layer upon layer.
You didn't look at it. That's why you said it. Let's play on that.
Layer upon layer. Yeah.
How do you say that? Like, the way I look at it, like, this motherfucker's just fucking around. There's nothing right here. But I feel like that the white dude over there got in there and was just talking to him and shit. He was just like, whatever. Just, you know, having everyday conversations until he figures it out. You know? But, like, there's no record. How does informants start? They don't volunteer.
Right.
You think? How does an informant start? Usually, like, one motherfucker gets in trouble for something, right?
Yeah, they get in trouble for something.
Right.
And then this is the way.
And where did these alleged guns come from? The FBI?
Yeah, like the video didn't really say. Like they said that he supplied
they
the
put
guns.
it all on him, right?
Yeah.
Like they just soiled him. Like, yeah, he's snitching. Yeah, he provided guns. He's a total informant. But you know, they say like, yeah, so we gave him 18 fucking rifles, 32 pistols, 9 bags, and yeah, we told him good luck with that. And let us know how it goes in about an hour or two. Right. You know, trade up. They don't, and we also gave him a little bit of money, you know, to keep him prepared to this shit. You know, just show up and stuff, you know, just in case he needs it. Like, come on, man. Like, they didn't even acknowledge that part. They didn't acknowledge who was responsible. Who was responsible and gave him that alleged shit. Who was in charge? Who was he supposed to report to?
Right.
How did they get it?
Right.
Like, there's a whole motherfucking questions nobody's asking.
Right.
I just had 8 right there. You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next one?
Stokely Carmichael.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as Kwame Ture.
All right. Excuse me, fella. That's water bill.
I've been to prison since I came down here to organize in the South. What we're now going to...
A radio show.
50 years.
Welcome. I'm Frederica Newton, the president of the Dr. Huey P. Newton Foundation. My experience with the Black Panther Party began long before I officially joined as a 19-year-old college student. My mother, Arlene Slaughter, who was the real estate broker for the party, would often pose as a buyer to help secure several offices for the party. I, on the other hand, would steal food from the co-op grocery store where I worked to feed students at what I didn't know was a Panther school. Today, I am the president of the Dr. Huey P. Newton Foundation, which gets its namesake from my late husband, the co-founder of the Black Panther Party. The foundation is a cultural institution based in Oakland, California, and our mission is to preserve and promote the history, ideals, and legacy of the Black Panther Party. The following video is a documentary from the Oakland Museum of California that reflects the party 50 years later. It gives just a glimpse of the dedicated people and passionate workers that made the party possible.
So the definite significance of this video is this took place the same year Shabaka'S Black Experience Enhanced started. And Shabaka and Mad Dr. D came together to create this wonderful platform that we kept afloat for 10 years.
10 years. Yep.
So Shabaka'S Black Experience Enhanced is based off the 50th anniversary of the original Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. It started in Oakland, California on October 15, 1966.
Possible, and why the history deserves to be kept alive through a dedicated museum of its own. We are so thankful for the Oakland Museum's dedication to keeping this history alive in the city of Oakland, the birthplace of the Black Panther Party. Please do enjoy the film.
Let me do another copyright disclaimer because here we go. Bullshit. We don't need the bullshit. So once again, Puke 2, fair use. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use. And let me make sure I put this in the chat as well, because we don't need no fuck shit this evening. Last time we played a video like this, you know what happened. And I disputed that shit to the fullest.
Yes.
No, denied. No reason why it's denied, just denied. Research. There you go, P2.
I was working for the city government of Oakland, California at the time, and I was concerned that we had very few politicians. And some of the young people were running around saying Black Power this, Black Power that. And I'm saying, hey, you know what? You guys ain't gonna get any kind of power until you take some political seats. Political seats. Yeah, city council seats, county supervisorial seats. Oh, them the white man seats. I say you better make up your mind to make it some black folk seats if you want to get some power.
In 1967, I was at Lincoln University, a historical Black university. And someone gave me a copy of Ramparts magazine. If you were awake and concerned about the world and wanted to know more, Ramparts was it. And as I opened the magazine to look at the article, there was a picture of Huey Newton strapped to a hospital gurney with a bullet wound. And I decided to leave and drive across the country to become part of the Huey P. Newton Defense Committee, but also to join the Black Panther Party. Because I read that it was an organization created not just to end police brutality, but the upliftment of all, as the term was then, poor and oppressed people in the world. And that was the kind of organization I wanted to be a part of.
At the time when I joined the Black Panther Party, Huey Newton was on trial in the city of Oakland. And my job at that time was to make sure that Huey arrived at court and left in one piece. You know, so the Central Committee, which is the governing body of the Black Panther Party, they used to say to me, whatever happens to Huey, better happen to you first. So something bad happens to Huey, it better happen to me first. I'm laughing, okay.
My work with the Black Panther Party was really an outgrowth of the kind of family activism that I was blessed with. My mother actually founded the Huey P. Newton Defense Committee, which was an outgrowth of an organization that had been sort of called Honkies for Huey. My mother did not consider herself a honky, but a legitimately concerned social activist who wanted to right something that was wrong. We were white.
They're the White Panthers.
Effectively, most of us, working in predominantly white communities. But we felt at the time that the kind of example and the kind of programs and the kind of perspective that the Black Panther Party had was right for us as well.
It was 1966. I graduated from high school.
And governing body of the Black Panther Party, they used to say to me, whatever happens to Huey better happen to you first. So something bad happens to Huey, it better happen to me first. I'm laughing, okay.
My work with the Black Panther Party was really an outgrowth of the kind of family activism that I was blessed with. My mother actually founded the Huey P. Newton Defense Committee, which was an outgrowth of an organization that had been sort of called Honkies for Huey. My mother did not consider herself a honky, but a legitimately concerned social activist who wanted to right something that was wrong. We were white.
Yeah, I'm honky.
Effectively, most of us, working in predominantly white communities. But we felt at the time that the kind of example and the kind of programs and the kind of perspective that the Black Panther Party had was right for us as well.
It was 1966. I graduated from high school, and Black Power movement was in the air. The Black is Beautiful was in the air. James Brown song was popular. I'm Black and I'm Proud, you know. And we would be at home and we would be listening to Malcolm X Speaks on the album, you know, and it felt like contraband.
It was for us, especially aware students. It was our 9/11. We tried the olive branch, we tried peace. We will no longer accept them just coming in and killing us. We're going to defend ourselves from now on and also inform our people about their legal rights. So thus was born the concept of the Black Panther Party for self-defense.
I think like so many people from Oakland, it's always been a part of my DNA. It's always been something that I've assumed. I've always had Panther alums or Panther members be my teachers, my guardians, my caregivers. So I think about Black Panthers the same way I think about hip hop. I was born in '84. Both have been around my entire life.
I believe that we've heard about the Black Panthers when I was in middle school, but I can't really remember it.
To be honest, I think that before I came to the museum to learn about it, I never really understood what it was. I heard about it, like the name, but I never really understood like what happened, where it happened, stuff like that.
I first became aware of the Black Panthers around 6 or 7 years old. Through family history, my family was telling me about one of my Uncle James that was murdered by the Oakland police, and the Black Panthers came and supported my family behind that.
My grandma was a Black Panther.
In 7th grade, I had a teacher, and I can't remember his name, but I can remember his face very vividly. And actually, the first thing that we studied was the Holocaust. And I had such a visceral reaction. I cried. I couldn't stop crying like for days. Like, it was ridiculous. He just started feeding me information about social movements, the anti-war movement. and eventually the the Civil Rights Movement, and eventually the Black Liberation Movement. And so that's when I found out about the Black Panthers. But it wasn't in a school book. It was a book that he brought, totally separate.
So my mother and father were both Black Panthers, and affectionately, the children have become known as Panther Cubs. My father is Emory Douglas. He is the former Minister of Culture of the Black Panther Party. So he was responsible for a majority of the artwork that you see related to the Panthers in the newspaper. But in terms of really understanding a global perspective of who the Panthers were and what they did, I didn't start learning that until college when I attended one of my father's first lectures. But my grandmother, on the other hand, my mother's mother, she would talk to me and she would say, you see those boys standing there on the corner? If the Panthers were here, they wouldn't be doing that. They'd have something to do.
When I was in high school, sometime around 2002, for some reason I had this inclination to read about the past. And I was not satisfied with what I was being taught in school. So I found the People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. And I remember reading, zoning in on the 60s and 70s. And I read about the Panthers, and I'd never heard about the Black Panthers. We never learned about them in school. We learned about hippies and we learned about draft dodgers and all those things. But hearing about a group of like young Black radicals in California was like a completely new thing to me. When I saw photos of Kathleen Cleaver or Angela Davis, I felt like I was looking in a mirror of myself. But at the time, I had like straight hair, I grew up in a small town, so you kind of try and blend in. But the person who I wanted to be was kind of more those images that I saw.
I was about 15, 16 when I first heard about the Black Panther Party. It's so crazy. I heard from it from school. The fact that I was a young man not knowing anything about, such powerful history. I feel like it was no priority letting young men of color just know about the power struggles of power to all the people.
This is an integral part of our society. It should be taught across a range of different subject matter. These are historical elements that really shape who we are, how we engage in government, what we should expect from government, and how we perceive what change we can make as contributors in society.
Protest today against the dump. Against thousands of people showed up.
You bring out the rebel in me, the dark velvet feline, tender and fierce, a beautiful Black Panther. You bring out the West Oakland African in me, the warrior queen who took burnt land and grew culture like forest on indigenous burial ground. You are the one I would try to stay home for. Maybe, just maybe, have another baby for. Allow you to enter my sacred spaces and pray at my altar before dawn. You, only you. You bring out the 79th and Lockwood in me, the 92nd and Hillside, the attitude that melts plastic and sets your libido on fire. Phonies get scared, but you bring it out and get ignited. So I keep it lit 100% for you. You bring out Haiti, Angola, and Brazil in me, the Atlantic and Caribbean Sea, the diaspora Black in me. You bring out the Olmec stoneheads with cornrows, the Mayan Kemetic connection, the Ifa Santeria and Candomblé in me, the Pentecostal Vodun high priestess in me. I could lead thousands of slaves to freedom and still come home and surrender to you. You bring out
the black-eyed peas and collard greens on New Year's Day in me, the starvation fast on Thanksgiving in me, the no religion having sinner in me, the questioner of all things, the pretty girl with ebony eyes, the one that Stevie Wonder made songs about, the one that lures tourists into ghettos, favelas, and shanty towns, the one the gentrifiers seek. You bring out the quilombos in me, the Angoleta and Hyena and Zinga in me. You bring out the Holy Ghost, hallelujah, church on Sunday, talking in tongues in me. And it's just Friday afternoon. I now pronounce you all mine. I will paint your body in red ochre, douse you in the fragrant scent of God's liqueur. You can play in my locks when we're done. I will cross your heart with my beads of sweat, anointed in lilac wine. Now everyone will know you are mine. You, my love, only you can get this. Love the way an Oakland woman loves. Come, let me show you now. Thank you.
Wow.
Being in the Black Panther Party changed my life in every way. My heart opened to new ways of being. I was very shy, and I realized, for instance, that I had to step forward and speak because so many people after a point were being jailed and killed and jailed and killed, that it was important for all of us to take responsibility for uplifting the communities we were serving. The Black Panther Party changed my understanding of generosity and compassion because we gave all of the time. We worked 19-hour days. And by the way, the median age of a Black Panther Party member was 18, 19 years old. So my mind was expanding. My heart was open, and I was using my physical body, pushing it to its limit every day.
The Black Panther Party became a place where people came to solve problems, right? So to me, when I was 17, we were talking about starting a breakfast program, actually feeding kids. No one had done that before, right? And so those kind of programs enabled me to stay in the organization because when you have work on a program, it's so fulfilling to you that each day that you wake up, that you know that you're doing something positive in your life. You're making a difference. You're feeding people's kids. You're escorting somebody's grandmother or grandfather to the bank so they won't get robbed. So those kind of programs are embedded in you. They make you a stronger person and makes you eager to go out and do more.
It was my work volunteering at one of the Black Panther Party's free clinics, which got me interested in medicine. I had actually dropped out of college to do this work. And I actually went and discussed returning to college with the leadership of the Black Panther Party, whether they thought it would be useful and good and the right thing for me to go back and try to become a doctor. They thought it was a cool idea. They said, we need doctors. And that's actually how I ended up going back to school and finishing school and going on to medical school and becoming a physician.
Never had I experienced so much death month after month after month until I joined the Black Panther Party, because the local police in all of the cities where there were party chapters and the governments were bent on wiping us out. When you skirt that close to losing your life, you don't take any moments for granted. The highest example of that is the day that I got the phone call that John Huggins, my husband, and Al Prentice Bunchy Carter, my dearest friend, had been killed on the UCLA campus in daylight. Then 3 months later, I was arrested for conspiracy to commit murder, a murder I did not commit.
Right.
And I spent 2 years
Right.
incarcerated without my baby daughter. So John was killed. I was arrested when my daughter was 3 months old. And when the charges against Bobby and I and others were dropped, my daughter was 2.5. So that changed my life, her life. Everything was changed.
Personally, they've shaped who I am and how I think, and particularly the women, Erica and Elaine, to see warrior women in positions of power and warrior women standing up in the face of power and taking the consequences for doing so. I think it shaped my character. It shaped how I carry myself. It shaped my belief about, where and what women should be in the struggle.
The work that I'm doing, focused on improving outcomes for boys and men of color, is really rooted in the work of organizations like the Black Panther Party. What I saw in the Panthers is just a awe-inspiring hope and belief in themselves and one another, in the community, and in the possibility for change.
That's why you got to have the Black Liberation Army.
I'm really concerned about mass incarceration and the amount of Black people who are in prison today. It's outright a form of slavery, and it's something that has ravaged the Black community all around the nation, specifically here in Oakland and Alameda County. There are 375,000 people who are formerly incarcerated in Alameda County, which is about 1/4 to 1/3 of the population. We've been spending so much money on locking people up and just having them sit there and rot. A disproportionate amount of Black people.
I really feel that as long as we are being murdered at a rate of what I believe is more than one every 28 hours, it's hard to move to do anything else. I think it's hard for people that who don't live in our communities to really understand the weight of that, right? And so for me, there's all of these other ways in which we need to get liberated, but getting the pigs of our community is number one.
I think one of the issues that the Panthers brought up that back then was a really radical idea, but now is very mainstream, is like access to clean, healthy food as a human right, and land sovereignty, essentially.
The reality of racism, which has been entrenched in this country since its inception, still exists. The pervasiveness of racism in police departments across the country and police violence still exists.
You say it's true.
And perhaps most recently, I have to add that the threat of fascism in this country still exists. We now see rising onto the national political stage a bigoted, bellicose demagogue who attracts a significant following. And I find this extremely scary. I don't see that we have successfully transformed our society into the kind of vision we had way back then. We certainly tried our best in our limited way, and the struggle continues.
Oh, he's not. Maybe right there in this moment, you might have a reflective conversation. But did you see any?
No.
The legacy of the Panther Party, it's a community work. We did the day-to-day work. I mean, I literally put down my violin, put my career aside. It wasn't till years later that I went back to school. So all that time to work in the civil rights movement, was a great sacrifice. So
when I talk to people, they say, well, that's happened a long time ago, and we're in 2016. I said, well, the Black Panther Party started 14 medical clinics in America. 2 are still open today. There are 2 cities in America, in Portland and Seattle, where people are still receiving services from institutions set up by the Black Panther Party in 2016 today. Kids are receiving a breakfast today every morning because of the Black Panther Party. People know they have sickle cell anemia or the sickle cell trait because of the Black Panther Party. So all these things make a difference to people's lives because it's life and death.
I would say the legacy of the Panther Party is a legacy of resistance. It's a legacy of rebellion. It's a legacy of justice. And these are all things that I believe, America is firmly rooted in. This is how our country began. With people seeking freedom from tyranny, freedom from oppression.
It was one of the best things of moving to Oakland, right? That a lot of my heroes were here. They're a source of inspiration, both because of the work they did, but I think also the anger and the rage that boils up in our bellies when we look at what was done to them by this government. When we look at how some of them are still paying the consequences of what was done to them by this government. That serves as, part of the fire that keeps us moving, keeps us working, and also keeps us very clearly aware of the enemy we're dealing with.
The Black Panthers represent something very important for the culture of Oakland. We have a very unique social justice organizing culture here. Oakland is almost like an incubator for social justice movements and tactics, and a lot of that has to do with the Black Panther Party.
Young men bigger than me, they'll pick me up and give me this bear hug while they're holding me one hand and holding up their sagging pants with the other. And this is what they tell us: we love you. You put your life on the line for us. We know we got issues out here, and we're ready to work with you to solve it.
I think the legacy, what they wanted us generations later to remember today, is that you have to fight for what you want. And that doesn't mean like physically, but you got to put in some effort and show that you really want it, and good things will come.
And I would like us to be remembered, not only as servants of the people, but as that movement that was bringing us to a place of harmony and balance.
That's what we do. We serve the people. That big song, okay, come on, that big song.
Black bodies glisten in hot sunshine. Blood lets from open wombs and covers ghettos full of starving children. Hungry for comfort, hungry for justice, hungry for liberation. Cooling libation comes in the formation of a party. Much needed relief dressed in black leather jackets and black berets, set atop fully nappy heads, furrowed brows, and focused dark eyes that seem too much to look the other way or turn the other cheek, a valiant rejection of meek-minded passivity that lulls the people to sleep. Working in concert with their oppressors in return for empty promises of equality somewhere on a distant horizon. The hollow sound of one entering the chamber demands freedom now and echoes through project houses, social service agencies, and government institutions. This was the promise of revolution.
Yeah.
Demonized, glorified, feared, and rejected. No matter. The work moved forward with a single-minded focus on freedom.
Yeah.
The people were thrilled, the politicians terrified, the world afire with love for Black skin, Black language, Black music, Black power.
Yeah.
Sacrifice is so big, there is not enough room in my mind to overstand what you gave, what you built, how you wept, what you felt, how you strategized, what you organized, how you were attacked, and how you fought back. And all of what you lost. Your youth, your families, your friends, your freedom. You ignited the hopes of generations of Black nations, inspired millions to stand tall and fearless in the face of an impossible enemy, to push through the sewage of capitalism, the scourge of racism, the lie of the American dream. You taught us to fiend for our freedom, to demand it at any cost, to reject any fear of loss, and to build across ideologies to imagine society where the underdog wins. Little Black girls and little Black boys saw you in their reflection, inspiring a rejection of Ken and Barbie in favor of Huey and Elaine, dreaming of being just like you someday. And I did too. Nappy-headed 7th grade me found you buried deep in a book placed high on a shelf in an empty library on a hot Vegas Sunday afternoon. I had learned about King and Parks in school, but there had been no mention of you. And as I studied, I started to bloom, to question authority, to challenge my teachers, to push back the narrative. Became less conscious of my hair and more politically aware. Built the courage to return stares of racist rednecks on Vegas streets whose hatred poured down their faces in Vegas heat. I stood brave inside your courage and tall inside your legacy. You carried me through and out of that godforsaken town, landing me here, to your birthplace, where the heart of the Panther beats on. And I see you. I see your pain buried beneath personas you put on when you walk out your front door. I see wounded warriors speaking at rallies and being honored at dinners. I see strained budgets and bodies that push forward in spite of it all. I see new generations trying to emulate you and failing. We cannot be you. We can never be you. That was your time and your space. There is no turning back the clock. The way we honor you is to walk forward along the path that you have laid, praying with moving hands and feet while doing the work in your name.
Okay, thank you, Cat Brooks. That was beautiful.
The prevailing myths tend to be that the Panthers were dangerous, that they were thugs, that they were radicals without a cause. And I think that, that these were all myths that were spread in order to defame them, in order to discredit them, in order to paint them in a negative light.
I don't know criminals who feed people breakfast in the morning or escort seniors to get their checks cashed or get bus transportation for people in the community to ride buses to go to prisons so we can keep the family unit together. I don't know any criminals that do those kind of things, but we were grouped in that kind of category, and all we were trying to do is better the community.
The Black Panther Party was anything but a racist organization. The Black Panther Party rejected a racist vision. Racism implies the ability to oppress another people because of the color of their skin or because of their religious belief. And the Black Panther Party was in no way in a position or ever sought to do that. They had a deep and profound understanding of what racial oppression means in this country. But they had a class perspective on where this oppression originated. And that this struggle that we were all involved in wasn't in the end about race. It was about changing class dynamics of oppression.
And that was part of what made them such a threat, was that they were about uniting movements of oppressed people to build one united movement where Black power mattered and brown power mattered and yellow power mattered and red power mattered.
See, so a lot of people tried to say that we were the opposite of nonviolence. That wasn't the point at all. The right to peaceful protest is nonviolence, right? Peaceful protest, First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America. That's a law of the land, that you have a right to peacefully assemble and peacefully redress your grievances.
A lot of times when I was out traveling growing up, so, oh, you're from Oakland, was it dangerous with the Black Panthers? I just couldn't think of anything further from the truth. Every Panther I've known has been committed to freedom in a really tangible way. And to hear them addressed as terrorists or to hear them addressed as as violent or anti-American even. I feel like the Panthers did something that was more American than anything, dissent. And so I feel like in a really real way, the Panthers are the best Americans I know.
Especially since I don't like putting on clothes.
I never realized it at the time that I was the first female to join. It was at a conference at UC Berkeley years ago, and we had a panel with all the men of the party and all the female, and Bobby Seals was there. He pointed me out and said I was the first female to come into the office. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I was. I think at the time, women, young women, we didn't think of it as being, oh, you're a male, you're female, you have to do this, and you have to do this just because you're a woman. We did everything because the work needed to be done. And so the guys peeled potatoes and served kids just like the women did. I think people get mixed up with the women's liberation movement. And this is pre all of that.
I never forgot one time I got to Chicago there for the first time. And we came from the big rally out of the church. It's 500 or 600, 700 people over there. And we got back over to the headquarters, and they had this big long table. You could sit 20-some people around this long table. And then suddenly all these sisters come out with platters and platters of fried chicken, 3 or 4 platters, bowls of greens and cornbread and potato salad and what have you, et cetera, and sitting on the table. And then I noticed the sisters stood back against the wall. About 8 or 9 of them. I says, aren't you sisters going to eat? Oh, we don't eat until the brothers finish eating. I said, wait a minute. What? You talking about? Yeah, Chairman. You see, the sisters got to wait for us brothers out here, to eat first. I says, crap. And then the guy says, put that chicken down. He's getting ready to eat. I said, put that chicken down. I says, I hereby give you a directive. Now, you did the work here. Obviously, you cooked all this food. And these guys are getting ready to get all the choice pieces and leave the crumbs to you. I said, that's crap. That's pure exploitation.
So there was male chauvinism elements in the Black Panther Party, but we worked to eradicate it. You couldn't refer to women outside of their names. You couldn't, the B word and those kind of things. You could not disrespect the sister in the party. Women in the Black Panther Party had every opportunity to advance. There were women in the party that ran chapters, like Erica Huggins ran the New Haven chapter. So in the Black Panther Party, you learned to take orders from whoever was in charge. Whoever was in charge was qualified to be in charge. So even if you was a male chauvinism, if you didn't like that person, you couldn't show it. Or if you didn't like women being in the party or holding positions, it's time for you to leave.
I don't like the word regret. It's kind of a pointless emotion, I think. We were very young people. We were impassioned and we were dedicated and we were committed, but we were young. And with youth comes excitement and vigor and energy, and it also comes naivete and lack of a big perspective sometimes, or oftentimes. So I personally have come to reject the use of arms as a way of solving the big problems that we face in the world. I don't and will not ever oppose a group of people or an individual who feel it and find it as a last resort necessary to take up arms against legitimate and overwhelming oppression, but I feel there's tremendous risk in the use of any kind of violence. We had a lot of guns in the cultural mix of the time, and I'm not at this moment criticizing that. But for myself, personally, I find that use of the gun as a metaphor for the legitimate struggle of peoples, an image that I personally don't like and don't connect with now.
Regrets. Yeah, I do have some criticism of things we did. For instance, profanity. We were, for a period of time, the Black Panther Party was caught up into this free speech movement kind of jargon where we would say what was on our mind, we would cuss and use foul language, and older people in the community are not really for that, so that turned off a lot of people who go to church or religious, and at a certain point of our legacy, the party kind of strayed away from working with the church in the community, right? So our understanding at that time was some kind of either you're part of the problem or part of the solution kind of, concept, which was incorrect, because a person could be part of the problem and part of the solution at the same time. That's a dual nature thing.
When I had my child, my daughter, we had, I guess, a child development center. I guess that's what it was called, CDC. And so I thought that you place your child in the CDC and she gets raised up while you do all the work, And I missed out on a lot, So actually it wasn't until after I left the party that I began to understand a lot of things about myself. I was in the moment. And I never made judgment on anything that happened in the moment. I just was in the moment, So anyway, yeah.
In place of every liquor store and check cashing place in every community in the United States.
I don't want just a picture of me and Huey standing up somewhere, you know what I mean? I want the grassroots brothers and sisters in various programs, you know what I mean? Those programs were the thing that gave the Black Panther Party real character.
Wow. I'm so glad you asked that question, because I think I should design it, along with Emory Douglas should design it, since we're both artists. And I imagine two youth, male and female, at a forefront, the vanguard, and the community behind them.
I would build a monument in Bobby Hutton Park in West Oakland. It's called the Infirmary Park. I would change that name. I would take that sign and throw it to the curb and put up a sign that says Bobby Hutton Park, the People's Park.
The first image that pops into my head is the fist. And I can imagine just a giant black fist would be really neat.
Oh, it doesn't need to be phallic. That's one thing about it. It could be round. It could be pyramid shaped. It could be more ethereal.
Where would it be? Well, you'd think Oakland, of course, because this is where we originated, but I think it's even greater than that, like Martin Luther King, it's greater than that. But I think it should be in Washington, D.C., right along with the rest of them,
To get political with it, you could put it across the street from the OMCA in front of the courthouse. That could be really impactful. I highly doubt that would happen.
The fact that there is not a monument says a lot. And I think that is a mistake. And I think we should be uplifting all of the positive contributions of folks who have worked to resist, who have worked to reform our society for the better. And in my mind, that's what a Panther monument would do. It would affirm and uplift the value of all those heroes who contributed to paving the way for us.
Let's call a spade a spade. Let's call a pitchfork a pitchfork. Let's just say we know what a posse look like, what a mob can do. We know about chasing ghosts. We know about finding ourselves in dark rooms. We know about safety in numbers. Let's admit that the town people ain't never been afraid of the giant, that the body has always been bigger than the head, that the power has always been with, of, and for the people. So let's just tell the truth. Let's just be honest. Let's talk back. Let's march to infirmary. Let's outline some points, and let us speak of police who will step over our sleeping children to shoot their fathers and ask why they woke, and ask why we have guns. We cannot forget how whales sound escaping from a siren or a boy. Let us call little Bobby's name. Let's call little Bobby's mama. Let's put her on the phone with Wanda Johnson or Sabrina Fulton. Let's talk about how easy it is to choke, how America's gravest mass shooting is durational, collective. Let's say Wounded Knee and never again. Let's say move on HQ and never again. Let's say it in the same breath as Flint, in the same water as everywhere we have been drowned. Let's say America and mean necessarily the trail we wept to get here, the choppy ocean that fought to kill us. Let's say Los Angeles and Philadelphia and Accra, and mean the parts of the world who knew revolution as we did, black and impoverished and just coming back from a war like always. Let's talk about money, as if the first U.S. bailout wasn't stocked in the hull of a slave ship. Oh, but we ain't supposed to talk about that. We ain't supposed to talk about cotton. We ain't supposed to talk about that gin. We ain't supposed to talk about Jim Crow. We supposed to be post. We ain't supposed to ask for what's owed. We're supposed to be thankful to a tyrant. We supposed to kowtow. We supposed to back down. We supposed to not talk about our ache or what we've missed or how we ain't never had a language or a flag or even a proper family reunion. We are never going to know the names of the people who died for us to live in terror. Let us admit that the idea of Africa is still an offense punishable by death. We are not to dream of going home, not to speak of what has been stolen, not to feed our children, not even to let our hair take flight. We ain't supposed to do anything but die. Not nothing. We supposed to die. We supposed to not even know we supposed to die. We supposed to not speak that we know we're supposed to die. We're supposed to watch our sisters rub crack chalk on their eyes. We're supposed to sit and eat stale crust and look on from the outside. What kind of party is that? Let's start our own. We supposed to sit here and wait till somebody let us stop waiting on freedom like it's the whooping cough. Stop hoping freedom is gonna court us on a Thursday date night. Quit crossing our legs and biding our time and biting our nails. It's our birthright, and they will lie to us and tell us we are violent for wanting peace. Peace is our dowry. We wed to a democracy that keeps taking off its ring. We married to a decadent system that mocks squalor and honor. We saw what they do to our leaders. We see how they're trying to string us up. There are bodies on the asphalt. There are members in holding. There are lines drawn all around us, and they closing in tight. There's a courthouse. There's a free breakfast. There's Emery's pen. There are Tarika's fingers, Sonia's poems, and Bobby's plans in kitchen. There are instruments of light and joy. There are folks waiting on orders. There are children in the hallway singing songs about our mothers. These blues people in their black leather. There are teenagers sneaking into our meetings. There are old folks who are both afraid and resentful. They didn't do this first, but some did. Some dusted off their pistols and got right to it. Right here on Grover MLK, right here on 10th Street, right here out front of McClymonds and Merritt. Come on, real revolution. Come, real revolution. Come, real fire and fake alibi. Come some Sunday when some brother comes to with the visceral realization that he lost sanity to a country that would have his breath on a plaque, would have his head without thinking and mounted. He's either going to want to get even or get freedom. The whole universe stands to benefit if this black man is free. The truth of the matter is white folks' freedom depends on ours, and we've outgrown a binary that excludes all other comrades. We're talking about all the people, all the people, all the people. Let's take all the power, all the power, all the power, all the people, all the people, all the people, all the power, all the power, all power to the people.
Yeah, that was fascinating. I gotta wait. Jesse has access to it, so whoever's in the queue is up next. That was pretty good. I'm gonna stop.
You know, the rallying cry for the civil rights movement for years, which was freedom now. What do we want? Freedom now. Instead, he stands up and he says, we've had enough of saying freedom now. He said, I've been to prison. This is the 27th time I've been to prison since I came down here to organize in the South. What we're now going to chant is Black power. And then he says, we want Black power. And the crowd cries back, Black power. And he repeats it. We want Black power. They chant back, we want Black power. This goes on back and forth 5 or 6 times. And the next day it's reported by the Associated Press. The story gets picked up in 200 newspapers around the country. And all of a sudden, everybody's talking about Black power.
And when the press picks it up, some of the press interprets this as this is racism of Blacks against whites.
What the press immediately hears in the slogan Black power are 2 things. One is violence. Oh, what you're saying is Blacks want to take power through violence. And the other was, this is all Black. In other words, you're talking about Black power. There's no room for white people. Now, as we'll discuss, both of those things become more of a part of the message as time goes on. It becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But at the very beginning, it was really the press reading those things into it as much as it was the original intent.
1966, the year that you write about in your book, is also a year of a lot of disputes within the civil rights movement between, for instance, the Southern Christian leadership movement and Martin Luther King and the younger people who want more power, more Black power, as opposed to just like peaceful resistance. So let's talk about some of those controversies. Why don't you describe what some of those controversies were between the older generation and the younger generation? And again, when I say older generation, I mean Martin Luther King was, how old was he when he died? Like around 36?
39.
39, yeah. So when I say younger, it's like the difference between like people in their 30s and people in their 20s. Everybody's young in that movement.
No, and actually one of the things I write about in the book is that the press portrayed Carmichael as King's nemesis. But in fact, on a personal level, they got along quite well. Stokely had a lot of respect for Dr. King. Dr. King didn't agree necessarily with all of Stokely's rhetoric, but he, admired the fact that he was an activist who had, put his life on the line and going out to organize in the South. But there were both sort of differences that had to do with tactics and strategy, but also with background. So one of the things that was different about the Black Power leaders was some of them had come out of the South, but a lot of them came out of the North. So they were the children of the Great Migration. Their parents and grandparents had come north from the South. They had had educational opportunities that Blacks in the South didn't necessarily have. Carmichael himself had gone to Howard University, and before that to the Bronx High School of Science in New York, an elite high school. And they just didn't have the sort of tradition of deference, frankly, that the older generation in the South had. They were less rooted in the church than the previous civil rights generation. So they just sort of had a different attitude. They were impatient. They had seen their parents, dreams dashed when they came north in the Great Migration. So that was the difference in background, but of course there were tactical differences as well.
John Lewis is a really interesting figure in 1966 because he's kind of in the middle here. He's kind of like a protege of Martin Luther King, but he is also from around 63 to 66, the chair of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And 1966 is the year that he's basically ousted from SNCC. And Lewis had been one of the original freedom riders. He was a voting rights activist. He registered Black voters in the South. He was arrested many times. Everybody probably knows that he led one of the marches from Selma to Montgomery, and his skull was split open by police in Selma while marching over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So he's kind of in the middle here. Because he's allied with SNCC, which is becoming very disillusioned with mainstream politics and with the emphasis on integration. But his roots are with Martin Luther King and peaceful nonviolence and voting rights. So why was he ousted in 1966 from SNCC?
After Selma, he was famous. And he used that fame to go around the country and also overseas to raise money for SNCC. So that was good for, SNCC's coffers, but it actually distanced him from a lot of the SNCC membership. And so he got out of touch with this increasingly militant mood that was taking shape in 1966. And that spring, there was one of these periodic retreats that SNCC would have. The entire membership, they'd take a week off, they'd all assemble at some place that they had been able to rent, at a cheap cost. And they would discuss strategy, but they would also elect officers for the next year. And Lewis had been in Europe giving speeches, raising money. He arrives badly jet lagged to this retreat at a religious camp outside of Nashville, expecting that he's going to be reelected. But a lot of the rank and file SNCC members at that point were upset with him for being too distant, too preoccupied with all of this travel, but also with still being too close to King. But actually, I think the issue was much more with LBJ. And as one of them put it, every time LBJ calls, he rushes to send his suit to the dry cleaner and get on a plane to go to Washington. So on the last night of the retreat, they have this vote. On the first ballot, he wins easily. But then people drift off to go to sleep. A young SNCC member comes into the hall and says, "Oh, wait a second. Not enough people voted," because a lot of people were ambivalent and they had abstained. Anyway, they force another vote. The debate goes on all night long. Finally, at the crack of dawn the next morning, they have another vote, and this time Stokely wins. And it crushed John Lewis. He said in his autobiography that he kind of knew that there was Stokely accused of plotting against him, other people, but he clearly did not see it coming. This had been his identity. He grew up as a poor sharecropper for his young life, and it really took him a decade to recover. We remember him now as this sainted congressman and beloved national figure, but that experience just completely crushed him, and it took a long time for him to recover.
Because he'd basically given his life to SNCC.
He had literally had almost died many times and gone to jail dozens of times for SNCC. And even the people who voted against him, one of the reasons they were so ambivalent is that even though they thought he was too mainstream, he was, too interested in allying himself with King and with LBJ, nobody disputed his bravery.
What did it represent within the civil rights movement that John Lewis was basically ousted from SNCC?
Well, I think it had two effects. One was on the way that SNCC was perceived by the outside world, particularly the white world. John Lewis was someone who was deeply respected by white journalists, by people who gave money to SNCC. And once they learned that he had been removed very precipitously, unexpectedly, it immediately sort of cast a shadow over the people who had ousted him. In other words, Stokely Carmichael and the new leadership group. They were immediately suspect in the eyes of a lot of people who supported John Lewis. But the other effect was internal. John Lewis had always stood for the principle of SNCC being open to white membership. He had a lot of very close friends among some of the original white members of SNCC. And so to the degree that as 1966 progressed and the whole issue of white participation loomed larger and larger, and it eventually led by the end of the year to the expulsion of the last remaining white members of SNCC. I think if John Lewis had been there, he would have fought that very aggressively. And once he was gone, the door was more and more open to that happening.
What were the consequences of, for instance, ousting the remaining white members of SNCC?
Well, first of all, you lost people who themselves had actually given much of their young lives to SNCC. Bob Zellner and his then wife, Dorothy Zellner, who were literally the last Remember, they had been among the first whites to join SNCC and were the last to be expelled. They had gone to prison too. They had risked their lives too, and they were incredibly committed. So you lost that. But then you lost, fundraising dried up. SNCC was largely funded by white donors, and press sympathy dissipated. And, Claiborne Carson, the great Black historian at Stanford, who wrote a book about SNCC, he also made the point, and I quote him in the book, that having white allies, particularly powerful white allies in various places in American society, but particularly in Washington and so forth, also provided a little bit of protection and a buffer against, for example, persecution by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. And once the sort of white supporters of the movement thought that there was no longer a place for them, they became a lot less interested in providing protection against what then became really rampant, which was a campaign by the FBI to investigate and to destabilize first SNCC and then later the Panthers.
Well, let me reintroduce you again. If you're just joining us, my guest is journalist Mark Whitaker, author of the new book, Saying It Loud, 1966, the year Black Power challenged the Civil Rights Movement. We'll be right back after a short break. I'm Terry Gross, and this is Fresh Air.
Hey, this is Seth Kelly, producer at Fresh Air.
And this is Molly C.V. digital producer at Fresh Air.
We co-write the weekly Fresh Air newsletter.
It's recaps of the week, staff recommendations, gems from the archive, and a glimpse at who's coming on the show soon, all in one place.
It's also a fun peek behind the scenes, what goes into the producing and editing of the interviews, and a chance to meet the people who make Fresh Air.
You can subscribe by going to whyy.org/freshair.
You'll hear from us soon. Now, back to the show.
Let's get back to my interview with Mark Whitaker, author of the new book, Saying It Loud, 1966, the year Black Power challenged the Civil Rights Movement. Whitaker says 1966 is the year the Black Power movement took full form. Stokely Carmichael, who popularized the slogan Black Power, became chair of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and began to redirect SNCC's focus from peaceful voter registration in the South to a more sweeping and radical agenda that questioned nonviolence, mainstream politics, and white alliances. It's the year the Black Panther Party was founded, the year Martin Luther King struggled to bring his Southern nonviolent integrationist strategy to the urban North and Chicago, and it was a year in which the Black arts movement flourished. I want to talk with you about the Black Panthers, but first I want to talk with you about the origin of the Black Panther name. It goes back to Stokely Carmichael. When he was working to register Black voters in Alabama, he co-founded a political party there, the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. This was a Black party with the goal of electing Black people to local offices like sheriff. Under Alabama law, each party had to use an animal to represent the party on the ballot for the sake of people who couldn't read. So the Lowndes County Party chose the Black Panther, which inspired the name the Black Panther Party, which was founded in 1966. So here's a clip of Stokely Carmichael speaking at the University of California, Berkeley in 1966 about why they chose Black Panther as the symbol for this all-Black party in Lowndes County.
In Lowndes County, we developed something called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. It is a political party. The Alabama law says that if you have a party, you must have an emblem. We chose for the emblem a Black Panther, a beautiful black animal, which symbolizes the strength and dignity of Black people. An animal that never strikes back until he's back so far into the wall, he's got nothing to do but spring out. Yeah. And when he springs, he does not stop. Now, there is a party in Alabama called the Alabama Democratic Party. It is all white. It has as its emblem a white rooster and the words white supremacy for the right. Now, the gentlemen of the press, because they're advertisers and because most of them are white and because they're produced by that white institution, never calls the Lowndes County Freedom Organization by its name, but rather they call it the Black Panther Party. Our question is, why don't they call the Alabama Democratic Party the White Cock Party? It's fair to us. Fair to us.
Informative and funny.
Yeah, I've got to say, I'm glad you played that clip because, you know, you can go back and quibble with some of Stokely's more extreme rhetoric, but he was a very, very charming and very, very funny guy. And it's one of the reasons why he had so much support, both within SNCC in that era and more broadly among Black people in those days.
So how did that speech and the publicity for that speech lead the founders of the Black Panther Party, Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, to name their movement after this emblem used in Lowndes County?
So that speech was given at Berkeley in October of 1966. It was a conference that had been organized by white organizers from the Students for a Democratic Society. And in anticipation of that speech, they brought some of the pamphlets that had been prepared for the campaign down in Alabama to the Bay Area. And so they were circulating around the Bay Area. Now, there are various stories about how Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, who founded the Black Panthers, when they first saw the symbol, but there's absolutely no question that the panther that we now mostly associate with the West Coast Black Panthers, with their berets and leather jackets and guns, was the very same panther that had been adopted, and the drawing of the panther, all of that was taken wholesale from this small would-be party in rural Alabama and transplanted onto this new Black Panther Party for self-defense of folks who had grown up in the ghettos of the North and the West.
So the Black Panthers not only appropriate the emblem of the Black Panther from the Lowndes County Party that Stokely Carmichael was very active in founding, they're also very inspired by Stokely Carmichael and by his rhetoric. But the Panthers take militancy a step further. Its first goal
On May 15, 1967, following the Sacramento incident, the Panthers released their 10-point program in the second issue of the Black Panther Weekly newspaper. The document was created in 1966. 5 founders of the Black Panther Party, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, championing solutions for pressing needs in the Black community, like decent housing, employment, education, and freedom from oppression. Each one of these statements was put into place for all Black Panthers members to live by and actively practice every day. They would publish this 10-point program, and all succeeding 537 issues of the Black Panther newsletter would contain the 10-point program entitled What We Want Now, which emphasized the party's commitment to advancing a revolution that addressed the needs and interests of the Black community. The 10-point program was a set of guidelines to Black Panther and state the ideals and ways of operation. It was a combination of the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. The Panthers wanted to not just to be about armed action, they wanted to be a legitimate voice of Black people. And as such, the program intended to take care of a broad range of the
1989, a year after he died, or was killed in Oakland by supposed gang members.
Okay, your family moved from Louisiana to California, like many folks. They moved what did your family hope when they moved to Oakland? And what did they hope for you?
My family moved from Louisiana to Oakland, primarily seeking a better life. My father was a farmer in Louisiana and a preacher, and he moved out to the Bay Area in order to work in the shipping yards. It was a naval supply, it was called at the time, and that was the reason most Blacks moved out for work, better pay. and a better life,
You're talking
hopefully.
about political aspirations that they had, and the fact that you're naming for Huey P. Long.
Education and research.
Yes, my father was impressed with Huey P. Long, even though at the time in the South that blacks couldn't vote. That Huey P. Long was created the first black hospital and medical school. And even though Huey P. Long um, gave the pitch to the white races that they needed a black medical school and hospital because he didn't want white women seeing black men nude and so forth. My father thought Huey P. Long was using tricks in order to improve the situation for blacks at the time.
Are there specific events or relationships that have helped advance your political grounding? I mean, things that you remember that sort of helped you in forming your political.
Well, my family they were always interested in politics, especially my father. As when we moved to Oakland, we were connected to the. Matter of fact, my father was the assistant pastor to Antioch Baptist Church. Reverend Thomas was the pastor, and this was down on 7th Street. The church became a member of the NAACP, and matter of fact, in the early 50s, that King was invited out by a collection of churches, and that was my first time hearing King at the Oakland Auditorium, I believe. But my family was interested in improving the political and economic situation of blacks.
How did Bobby Seale and you use the anti-poverty office as a base of operation for the early work of Black Panther?
Bobby Seale and I used the North Oakland Service Center as a really as a the original work spot to put together our program. They had all the machinery, mimeograph machines, and typewriters. Also, they were at the time the poverty program. The North Oakland Service Center was a part of the poverty program, and the service centers collected names of people on welfare, elderly people who needed aid. We used those lists to go around and canvass the community in order to find out the desires of the community. So we would go from house to house and explain to people our program. We printed up the first program at the North Oakland Service Center.
Why did you choose to focus on the police as a major target for the Panther Party?
Well, the police throughout the community, not only the Oakland community, but throughout the black communities in the country, were really the government. We had more contact with the police than we did the city council. The police were universally disliked. In Oakland, there was about in 66, there was about October 66 when the party was founded. There was about 1% black on the police department. Shortly before that, I think in 53, Oakland had its first black policeman who was a friend of my father's. His name was Kenner. My father broke friendship with Kenner because of his membership in the Oakland Police. Not because he was a policeman, but because at the time that the policy was that Kenner could only arrest black people, and if he could detain a white, but he would have to call a white officer. And my father thought this was degrading. There was no change from what was happening in the South.
Could you talk about the pattern of police brutality in Oakland as you understood it at that time, and how people articulated it to you?
Well, the police were were Southerners. Matter of fact, in '60s, they were still recruiting from Georgia because we captured some flyers, and they said that the white Southerners knew how to handle these Negroes. So the police were impolite, and they were very fast to kill a black for minor offenses such as black youth stealing automobiles. They would shoot them in the back and so forth. I can't recall any particular names, but it was widespread dislike for the police because of their inhumane treatment of blacks.
What was the intention of putting forward the 10-point program? And you might summarize that, the 10-point program.
Well, the 10-point program tried to identify the basic needs and aspirations of black people. We within the 10-point program, we came up with basically we needed education. We needed decent housing. We wanted fair treatments in the court. We wanted medical care. We wanted the availability for food and clothing for blacks, and full employment. So the program was a comprehensive program to really lay down a blueprint for community development.
Okay. And could you talk about, was there any relationship with the Nation of Islam? And could you talk about your experiences with the Nation of Islam and how that affected the 10-point program's shaping?
Well, early on, I was about in the early 60s, about 1960, 61, I had started Oakland City College. At Oakland City College, I was a member, instrumental in creating the Afro-American Association. The Afro-American Association was led by Donald Wharton. And the program was a cultural program to institute ethnic studies, African studies and Afro-American studies. From the Afro-American Association, we created from the Afro-American Association, it's stemmed the SOUL Student Advisory Council, and that was the action group inside of the school. After we created the study classes, I felt that there was need to do other things to affect the wider community. And I came in contact with the Black Muslims. I was very impressed with Malcolm X. And Malcolm X program, or the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that Malcolm X followed, program was it was like a 10-point program. Matter of fact, that our program was structured after the pattern after the Black Muslim program. It was minus the religion. And I think that I became disillusioned with the Muslims after Malcolm X was assassinated. I think that I was following not Elijah Muhammad or the Muslims, but Malcolm X himself.
Okay, you were talking before about community control within the Black community and also integration into larger institutions. Could you talk about how you believed in that philosophy and how you saw the Panthers sort of implementing that?
Well, a short time after I was impressed by the Muslims and disillusioned after the assassination of Malcolm X, I was studying politics, and I became interested in progressive labor and the Socialist Workers' Party. At that time, it was during the period of African liberation. Most of the African countries were liberated during the 60s from colonialism. And that we felt that
putting their back.
There was a need for not a separate nation, but control of our dispersed communities. And we wanted control of the communities where we were most numerous and the institutions therein. and at the same time that we felt that we were due, because of tax paying, we were due free access to and equal treatment in public facilities. And we thought everyone should have that kind of participation in public facilities.
Nope, nothing.
Second sticks.
There we go. Now you want
Okay, again, the notion of community control in Black communities and also funding for public
It's a very temporary
access to
mouth.
public accommodations, how is that part of the Panther
At the time, there were many Black nationalist groups that were influenced by the African liberation movement. And we differed from the Black American nationalist movement, and that we felt that we wanted, it wasn't our goal for segregation or integration, really. We wanted control of the institutions in our community where we were most members, and at the same time that we thought that we were due public to access to public institutions on an equal basis. We thought everyone should be able to equally participate in public institutions. I think that, as I remember back, I was influenced by the situation and the conditions in China, in the People's Republic of China, where there were many minority groups. I think the Huns are the majority group. All of in the areas of the minority ethnic groups, the Chinese, this ethnic minority controlled its community, but yet they had full access to the public facilities. So I thought that if it could work there, it could work here.
That's good. Could you talk about you've done it a little bit, but talk about the original vision of the Black Panther Party. Did you see it as a local organization or as a revolutionary organization? What in the beginning, when you and Bobby Seale were first talking?
No, I thought that it would be a national organization. I thought that with our when Blacks across the country. All right. The Black Panther Party felt that we would quickly become a national organization when Blacks across the country saw what we were doing in Oakland by driving out what we call the oppressive army of police and controlling our community, the institutions in the community. We felt that the government's next move would be to bring in a National Guard to recapture these institutions, and this would connect us to the international movement of the workers' movement, the international proletarian movement, such as what's happening in Cuba, and we were very impressed by the Cuban Revolution, and at the time of the creation of the Black Panther Party, I was introduced to Marxism, and I think I had read a book called the Materialism and Empirical Criticism, and by Ivy Lenin. And at that time, that it was pointed out that there are many contradictory social forces, and if you knew what to increase or decrease at a particular time, that you could cause a transformation. And so we were trying to increase the conflict that was already happening, and that was between white racism, the police forces in the various communities, in the Black communities in the country. And we felt that we would take the conflict to a so high a level that some change had to come.
Something very specific. The action to gain a traffic light in front of Santa was fairly dramatic. Describe what happened, and how you went about trying to do that, and also the use of theater and drama and symbolic gestures.
I thought it was
Yes, I went to Santa Fe Elementary School in North Oakland, and while I was there, that many children were hit by cars and so forth. There was no traffic light in front of the school. There's a very busy street, Market Street crossing the school. So one of the first action of the Black Panther Party was to go down with our arms and be traffic police. At 3 o'clock, when the school was let out, we would stop the traffic and allow the children to pass. Of course, this was bring an army of police in the area. They would take over the traffic jam that would occur. So, and also they would attempt to arrest us for bearing arms. But they would become aware, which they were not, that the law provided for us to bear arms at that time. So we went to the city council and asked them to put up the planning commission of the city council, the Oakland City Council. So the Oakland City Council said that they had already passed some policy to put up a traffic light, but it would be about 5 years from 66, October 66. And we weren't satisfied with that. So we went to the community, 100 or maybe even 1,000 or so signatures, and took those to the city council. We also would still police when the police were not there. We would police the area, and every time we would try, the police would take over. So the purpose was served anyway. The traffic light quickly went up in about 3 or 4 months after that event.
What were your feelings when you went on the police patrols? You might describe them a little bit, but how did you feel?
Well, every time we would go out on the police alert patrols or surveillance patrols, that I would feel that we might not come back. I felt that the police might shoot us because they were very disturbed, to say the least, about the presence of blacks with guns. And some of the works of Fidel Castro when he was in the Sierra Maestra. As a matter of fact, before he left Mexico, that he asked that everyone give their name of their first of kin or someone to be notified in case of their death. And when people had to do that in his guerrilla organization, everything became very serious. And so we would, before we went on our first patrol, and anyone who would join us after, we would always ask who should be notified in case of their death. And this would make it very serious to the person.
Yeah, the Panthers often quoted the law. Could you talk about the importance of law, U.S. law to the Panthers? Was it tactical or was there a philosophical agreement? And what were some of the books that you read, and what were some of the texts that you read?
Well, while I was at Oakland City College, I took a law enforcement course, and it was criminal evidence by Alicorn and Fricke, and criminal law. And this was the textbooks used by the local law enforcement agencies, and that in criminal evidence there was a section inside of the book on reasonable cause to search and reasonable cause to stop, and we would follow the police around, and when the police would arrest or detain someone, we would read their rights. We would stand at a...
God, you done missed your whole show. We're going over Huey P. Newton right now.
Be ready for the next one. It's coming, right? Oh.
There's like 30 more minutes left of this video, though. So if you want to join us for the last 30 minutes, you can. I did email you the link. Yeah, I did. Yeah, we've been going over the whole history of the Black Panther Party.
I'm still listening.
A distance where the police couldn't say they were interfering with their arrest or their detention of the individual, and make sure that there was no brutality. Of course, this turned the wrath of the police on towards the party, and if they arrested anyone, we would, in some cases, we would go down to bail them out, thereby getting a new recruit in our organization.
Denzel Dowell was shot down in North Richmond.
The Blacc will be joining us here shortly, y'all.
1967, supposedly under some sort of fugitive or intent to commit a crime.
We're going to get up for that one.
How was this death the backdrop to the May 67 visit to the Sacramento State House?
There was a law, California law, and I think it still exists.
After that,
if there's reason cause to believe that a felony is being committed, and if the defendant flees, it's the right of the police to detain him and to capture him.
Hey, the Outlaws! Shout out to the Outlaws.
And that's including shooting
we went live
a person.
tonight. We get a special
Denzel Dowell was accused
live
of tampering with the lock in the back of a store. And he was shot in the back with a shotgun
FBI for life.
in Richmond. And there was some question whether he was walking through the alley or whether he was actually trying to break into the store. We protested his murder, and we went to the DA's office and the sheriff's department. And the sheriff told us if we didn't like the law of detaining or capturing a felon or suspected.
Sir, you're okay on camera noise. Is that right?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Again, the death of Denzel Dowell in Richmond became a motivating reason to go to Sacramento. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, Denzel Dowell was killed there in Richmond by the police and for allegedly tampering with the lock in the back of a store. And that we talked to the district attorney about his being shot in the back, and we talked to the sheriff. And they both claim that there was a justifiable shooting because if anyone is suspected of a felony and he tries to flee, then he could be detained or captured, apprehended anyway by any means necessary, including murdering a person. And if the sheriffs told us if we wanted those laws changed, we could go to Sacramento to change the law. And we said that we would go to Sacramento and talk to the legislature.
Okay. Why were the draft riots in October of '67, why were they significant in terms of a changing approach of the white left? And what are some of your personal memories of the draft riots?
I went to the Oakland Induction Center, where there was a march going on, and against the recruiting of soldiers for Vietnam, and the police moved in and started to beat the demonstrators. And I heard some of the white progressives say that we need guns. And of course, we had concluded that before we weren't armed at this particular meeting. Matter of fact, I think it was only Bobby and I who went down. This was shortly after the party was created. And matter of fact, after that event that we had a closer relationship with the white progressives in the area. At that time, we called them white radicals.
What happened that night in October of 1967, the night you were shot, Officer Fry was killed, and you were arrested? Could you just talk us through that?
I had been to a party meeting, and after the meeting broke up, I went down on 7th Street, which was an all-night spot for food. And as I drove down, I noticed police following me.
Shabaka'S in the
And
building.
Finally,
Shabaka almost
the
missed
police
his own show.
stopped me on 7th and
Greetings, Shabaka, from the Mile High Income for the city.
Greetings from Sin City.
Huey P. Newton's last interview, if I'm not mistaken, before he
That
was
is his last interview.
taken away from us. Okay. And we're about halfway through it, so you're just in time for the other half. We're closing because we got to move from this straight in the front line Black news.
All right.
Basically, we played clips about giving the whole history of the Black Panther Party from both white and black commentators. And we heard from the Panthers themselves on several of the clips. I highlighted the fact that we started on the 50th anniversary of the Black Panther Party, original Black Panther Party for self-defense.
Right.
We heard from Erica Huggins, Kat Brooks, and you definitely got to go back and listen to the playback, Shabaka.
Okay, and then also too, you do know that their start date was October of 1966.
Yes, October 15th, 1966 to be exact.
Wait a minute. You're right. Yeah, because when I went to the 50th anniversary of it, they're in Oakland. Yeah, that's what it was. And at the 50th anniversary, they had the shirts, you know, the original Black Panther Party shirts. They had the white ones that they reserved for the actual Panther members themselves, and then they had the blue ones that they sold to the general public. And they were selling them for $50 a piece. Get it? 50th anniversary, $50.
Yep, I get it. I get it.
All right, let me turn this idiot box off. All right, okay. All right, let HP talk.
Yes, sir.
I think 7th and Willow. And the police came around to my car, and there was a backup. So there were 2 police cars.
Kevin Barnes in the
So the police, I don't know whether he followed me because he had discovered who I was, but he asked my name. I gave him my name, and he told me to get out of the car. I asked the police, was there any reasonable cause to stop me? And he just said, get out of he just repeated, get out of the car. As I got out of my car, I took my book with me. There was a passenger who also was a party member.
Book with him.
All riding in the car also. And as I started to walk, the police then told me to walk back to his car. And as I walked back to the car, I turned around and started to read the reasonable cause to stop law from my law book, Alcorn and Frickley. And the police then told me that, he had every right to stop me and to go to the car. And I continued to read, and he pulled his revolver and shot me. I was wounded in the stomach. And
that's when they charged him.
There was a lot of gunfire. I was when I was shot, I became unconscious. There was many people on the street at the time. One police officer was killed. It was finally concluded that by my attorneys anyway, that he was killed by a shot from his back. By the second police officer. The second police officer also shot. He was shot about 5 times, and the first police officer about 3 times. At the time that I was not armed. The police officer, the pathologist discovered that the police was shot by his own weapon.
How did you get to the hospital?
According to the police reports, I commandeered a car and kidnapped the driver in order for him to take me to the hospital. I
Which
don't
is
remember
Highland
doing
Hospital.
this. There was a one
Right,
Odell
that don't
Lee
make no damn sense.
who, no, Ross. It was his name was Ross. I'm sorry. Who drove me to the hospital. It was discovered in his latter testimony. He gave a number of conflicting testimonies that I did get into his car and he drove me to the hospial. But before I arrived at the hospital, I became unconscious.
All
right. My next recollection was my conscious
Maria's in here. The Maria's in here.
was that the police were beating me on the gurney
And of course,
that the doctors were preparing me for surgery. Matter of fact, that became the one of my hands was the nerves were gone and in my left hand, and the police were spitting on me and so forth. There was a picture taken by some of the reporters who barged into the emergency room.
Him in the emergency
and
room.
the police beat the reporters also. But one reporter got away with one picture that showed that I was shackled on the gurney, and while the police said they beat me because I was struggling with them.
Yeah, bullshit.
You're going to jump ahead a little bit. How did your arrest how did your arrest affect the party? I mean, now they're leaders in prison, and how were you able to communicate while you were in jail?
Well, when I was arrested, I was taken to Kaiser Hospital. I was transferred from Kaiser Hospital to Highland Hospital, and as soon as this was October, it was near Christmas time, I became conscious with a local disc jockey dedicating a song to me. And the Beverly Axelrod, well, first it was Beverly Axelrod came to the attorney. At that time was Eldridge Cleaver's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Came to the hospital and discussed with me
oh my God, Pops cannot stand Elvis
support group and a fundraising group in order to defend me.
You out.
I communicated with the party through the attorneys. Before I went before I was held for murder in the first degree, I was shipped not to the county jail, but to San Quentin prison. And I was put on death row. And at the time, they said this is necessary because at the time, the county hospital did not have a detention center. So they, as they put me on death row, a group of police were on either side, 3 in the front, 3 in the back, and I was on the gurney, and they were chanting "Dead man, dead man." Later, I found out that this was the usual procedure of any condemned man who was coming off of death row to see his attorney and so forth. Of course, I wasn't condemned.
Started playing the banjo music.
But again, in terms of the leadership, how you talk about the tapes?
Oh yeah. I would communicate by making tapes, and the attorneys would send the tapes to the party, to the Black Panther Party, and the Black Panther Party would then send tapes back to me.
Mr. Say cool.
I'm interested in the language, particularly the word pig. Would you talk about that use of language of the Panthers and where it came from, particularly the term pig? And what was the intention? What was the political intention of calling these pigs?
the Black Panther Party felt that we needed to we needed imagery to change the consciousness of the
Like I could
people,
hear everything that was
and
he had
the police were disliked and so forth, so by the community. So we I don't know who, it might have been Beverly Axelrod or Eldridge. I don't think it was Bobby. Suggested that we.
It's almost over, Shabaka, and then we got to slide right on in the
Yeah,
front row.
yeah.
But
Can you talk about the political use of language?
Yeah, and I saw. I think this is up in this penthouse over there on.
We started to
yeah,
use
that's
on
the
Lakeshore.
symbol
A1.
of a pig.
He used to stay in the penthouse right next door to Huey P. Newton.
Yeah, and the penthouse
His name is
that, or
A1.
the building. Yeah, the Lakeshore Avenue Apartments, I believe was what they called, is directly
Yeah, he used to stay
east.
there.
Yeah, east of the Alameda County Courthouse. As a matter of fact, when Newton's case finally was decided and he was released about 1973, Jet Magazine did an article, a cover story on Huey Newton. And he was on his balcony, and you can see the Alameda County Courthouse directly west of his penthouse. And then on that same street, which goes over Lake Merritt, I'm trying to remember the name of the damn street because they rebuilt the bridge over it. Okay.
14th? 10th? Is it the 10th or 14th?
No, I think it's 10th because East 14th starts, which is now they call International Avenue now, was like about a block north of his building, and it would take you all the way into Fremont, California. It's a stretch, man, of about, oh boy, I'm going to say about 22 miles, and it goes through the heart of East Oakland, and also too off of East 14th Street is where the Fruitvale BART station is, where Oscar Grant was murdered. And keep in mind, the BART did not start operating until 1972.
Going to the 70s? Because the people that was giving me the tour kept saying the 80s. But I'll take your word for it over there.
No, because I distinctively remembering riding the BART around 1972, where it only went from the MacArthur station, where little Neil was murdered, out to a place called Fremont. But since then, they've extended it all the way up there to Richmond, California, Concord, California. Then they extended it as far as south to
like the
San
Metro
Jose.
Rail or the light rail. It's like
No, the BART is a bona fide subway similar to New York. It's the last one of its kind.
I know it's a subway, but I'm saying it's really loud. Like it's really loud, like a horror flick. Like especially when you're going under the Bay Bridge, like that shit is really loud.
Okay, well, actually, it's really, particularly, see, when you take the BART from San Francisco to Oakland, you are literally going under Frisco Bay because San Francisco Bay is only 90 feet at its deepest point. And your last stop in San Francisco before you go into Oakland is the Embarcadero station in San Francisco, which is right by the harbor.
Underground, because it goes underneath the lake. It goes underneath the bay.
No, it goes underneath. It literally goes underneath the bay, but it's below the bedrock of the bay. See, so you're not going in the water.
It's like 100 feet underneath the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you got 100 feet of dirt between the actual water itself and the actual tube, or what they commonly refer to as the Trans Bay tube. Now, the first stop when you come out of the Trans Bay tube into Oakland is the West Oakland station, and Dr. Newton was shot across the street from the West Oakland BART station is because I'm sure that you have showed some of the file footage of the late
Yeah.
1960s, and you would
Yeah.
see them building the BART trestle.
Yeah.
You can see the BART trestle as it is under construction, because from what I understand, they had started building it like in the early 1950s.
Oh,
And
wow.
keep in mind, you know, it's quite an involved system.
Yeah.
It really is. And what they did was, over the last 50 years, they added extensions to it, like at the
Yeah,
MacArthur
it's
station.
all the way to Antioch now.
Yes, sir. And then when you get to the MacArthur station, and do you remember when I did the video on little Mia, who was
Yes.
murdered at the MacArthur station?
Yep.
Yes, sir. That video came from the MacArthur station, you know, when we showed all the flowers and stuff like that.
The first time,
And
well, I guess it would be the second time I went to Oakland, but the second time I went to Oakland, I went to the West Oakland station.
right, and you were right across the street from where Dr. Newton was shot by the Oakland Police Department in October of
I kept
1967.
feeling that. Like I felt like, you know how you listen to your old saying, you listen to the wind and you hear the stories of long ago.
Oh yeah, that's an ancient African proverb, and that's why I
I really
stand
think
on
I was
my
experiencing
square.
that. And then
Huh? Oh yeah.
I seen the 880, and I was just like, wow, this is crazy. Like this
Oh yeah.
station
Oh yes, sir.
right
Yes,
next to
sir.
the goddamn highway.
No, oh yes, sir. And you see, that's an ancient African proverb. You see what I mean? And this is why guys like Dr. Newton, guys like Malcolm, guys like Ali, guys like Bobby Seale,
Yeah.
why, and Malcolm X, because they were
Yes.
inspired by Malcolm X. Because
Yes.
Malcolm X, you know, used to lecture up there at UC Berkeley before his.
Yes, that's where you want it. Like you always say, Shabaka, you want to get any activism off the ground, you take it to Berkeley.
Yeah, if you got any cause that you want to bring the world's attention to, take it to
Yeah.
UC Berkeley.
Yep.
From these
That's where we
guys,
supposed to link up and cuss out and culture.
exactly. You know, then the damn, COVID bullshit came. And
Yeah.
then, like I said, is that when I saw the BART police one day, I said, yeah, man, you guys caught that dude who killed little Nia. He said, yeah. And I says, tell me something. And they says, what's that? I says, how come you didn't shoot that bastard the way you guys did Oscar Grant?
Oh. And then they get so
And
quiet, their mouth gets so
yeah,
quiet.
and they walked away from me. And they said, you have a nice day, sir. And they walked off. And I said to myself, because if I would have said anything else, then I myself could have been the next one to get
the
shot.
nightstick would have been gracefully sliding
Yeah,
across.
glide gracefully upside my head. Oh, yes, sir. And then also, to say,
In one of these clips, they kept talking about goddamn John Lewis. I was like, fuck John Lewis. Oh, I got whooped and sell my ass nigga.
Yeah, stretched out. But this man, the Forte brothers, Lil Bobby Hood and Seal,
Yeah, they showed one of the
used to
Forte
patrol-
brothers.
Yeah, they patrolled up and down San Pablo. They patrolled up and down Telegraph, and then when they see the Oakland Police Department violating the rights of a brother or a sister, they go up there, wish your probable cause, this, that, there, and what have you. And then also too, the chapters had started spreading about 1967, 68 to San Francisco, to Los Angeles. Then they spread all the way to New York City, Baltimore, okay, also to Chicago, is because a good friend of mine, when we were younger, who I know to this
Stops
day,
along the way. You're missing Denver. You're missing Kansas City. You're missing
okay, all right, okay, that just go to, and Seattle, Washington. And Seattle, Washington, yeah, and I did see over there. I was about to call it the Infirmary Park, but I did see over there off of Welton, where they did pay to
We did.
the
We used to have the Panther head was right there. The Panther headquarters was right there off of Welton, right off of 29th.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then And to anybody out there that's listening, from what I understand, what the elders told me is that if you were a member of the Black Panther Party anywhere in the nation,
You
you
have
had
to
to
make
make
a
a
pilgrimage
trip to
to
Oakland. You
to
had to go to Defremery Park, and when we was with another network, as you are very well aware of, I did a video from Defremery Park. That it was the Panther Den, the big blue house. You just
Yep.
like where you had called me up and you said,
You
"Hey
have
man, this is in your district. Get down there because they're painting a mural honoring the women of the Black Panther Party." Because I remember,
Panther?
and
You talking about
huh?
the crypt to go through there?
No, no,
Something like
no, no. There wasn't no Crips at that time. It was just
Okay,
Panthers and revolutionaries.
exactly. Okay, now, now also too.
Okay.
Okay, okay, and then also too, the house that you told me about where they were doing the mural to the women of the Black Panther Party.
Yes.
Because I remember as a child, let me see, I was about 9, 10 years old in Los Angeles. I would see the sisters there with the big froze and the leather piece boots on, black boots. And I was just discovering girls at that time. And I distinctly remember the smell of Afro Sheen because, Afro Sheen was a haircut at that time. And they would said, "Hey, little brother, do you want to buy Black Panther paper?" And they were 25 cents a piece, you see. So this is how that they would fundraise for the organization is because they were feeding the kids,
All of that
not
was
only
yes. That's why I wish you
yeah,
would have been here. They covered all of that on the clips I was playing. But
oh
yeah,
man, yeah,
that's
you've
how
been
they
on for
wanted
3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Just
and they
make
had
sure you listen to the playback on your free time, Shabaka, because it was
okay,
real good clips I was able to pull up.
okay, and
So
then
I'm about
also
to email you. I'm about to email you the link for the next show. So if
okay, okay. And why my computer only showing the 17th when the day's the 21st? Huh?
Wait, today is
Okay.
the 17th.
Today is the 17th.
Yeah.
Ain't today President's Day too?
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
And
okay.
there was
All right.
protests.
President's
There was
Day on
protests
Huey P's
behind the
birthday.
dump. There were protests behind the dump. We had 1,000+ people here in Denver that was out there in the cold protesting the dump, as in
As
human
well as
shit.
they should.
Make it perfectly clear. But they protested from all the wrong reasons, like the illegal immigrants and shit. Like they don't want them to get
Oh
deported and all that type of
yeah,
shit. They talking about deport
yeah.
Elon. I got a kick out of that sign. Deport
Oh
Elon.
yeah, most definitely. Bar him from the U.S. Let him take his ass back to the Netherlands.
Yeah, let me tell you
Okay.
how not deport his ass.
And then also too, what had happened is, as the Black Panther Party, was getting influence around the world. Newton, let me see.
Shabaka, after
Then
this,
they
I
had,
put the clip back on, or we're not gonna get through it. I just sent
okay,
all the emails.
okay. Then they started putting the massive narcotics in the Black community after that.
Yep.
Yeah.
To identify the police. I don't know who first presented that symbol, but I knew that images had to be changed. Most of my young life, I was a student, and I know sociologically that words, the power of the words stigmatize people, and we felt that the police needed a label other than that fear image that they carried in the community. So we used the pig as a rather low-lifted animal in order to identify the police, and it worked. The community picked it up, and it sort of put the police in another category, a category that was not respected, and a category that the community could deal with, and the police were very offended by it. So it heightened the contradiction between the community and the police.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's continue with this sort of talk about language and the decision not to use certain words.
During the free speech movement led by Mario Savio, it later grew into it was corrupted into a dirty word movement. Matter of fact, in my autobiography, Revolutionary Suicide, I made a great mistake of criticizing Savio for this, but really had nothing to do with it. Eldridge Cleaver was impressed with the dirty word movement, and this influenced Bobby Seale. I was always against the use of dirty words because it didn't recruit anyone while it alienated other people. Many of the churches across the country allowed us to use their facilities for the Breakfast for Children program. Matter of fact, at the time, we were feeding about 75,000 children a day. And they eventually put us out of, they wouldn't let us use their facilities because of the profanity. I think that led into the contradiction that in the division of the party. Matter of fact, because I was against the use of the dirty words. Also, this was about '69. I was also against. I was for getting rid of all the arms. And just concentrate upon building local political institutions and participating in candidates for city council and so forth.
Noki was supplying them with the arms.
Okay, freeze that for a second,
David
brother.
Hilliard, Bobby Seale, and Eldridge Cleaver were for.
Shabaka, does Anoki does the name Anoki ring a bell? The Asian
Yeah,
dude?
it does. Yeah, it does. Because there was pictures of him standing up there at the courthouse.
Yeah, we played a clip earlier of him supposedly, allegedly, funding the Panthers' weapons, giving the Panthers weapons. But he was an informant, but they didn't have nothing on him.
Exactly. And then keep in mind that you have to understand too, is that the Black Panther Party was declared. Okay, and then the Black Panther Party was declared public enemy #1.
By punk ass cross-dressing J. Edgar Hoover. Yeah.
Right. And then also too is that, as you know, is that the heavyweight champion at that time did go to the Alameda County Courthouse and speak up for Dr. Newton. Also, too, the movie actor Marlon Brando had spoke out for Huey P. Newton as well, too. Yeah, Don Corleone himself, out of The Godfather, Marlon Brando. Of course, this is before he made the film.
We're not going to get through it. We got like 15 minutes.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Let him finish. Okay.
The profanity, and there were. Well, I don't know about Bobby Seale, but I felt that David Hilliard was leaning towards Eldridge Cleaver. Of course, the FBI and the COINTELPRO were aware of the brewing contradiction. And they took advantage of this by writing letters threatening letters to either party.
How did the media become part of the Panthers' strategy? I mean, how did it help the Panthers in terms of growth? But also, how did it hurt the Panther Party in terms of its relationship with the Black community or community?
The media, first of all, the media initially publicizes where that, and it causes immediate growth. Like for an example, they covered Sacramento. They covered escorting Malcolm X's widow from the airport. While they reported the sensational parts of our movement, they neglected the community programs that were really the basis of our whole organization. They neglected reporting the development of our political our ability to politicize the community. Also, the party grew much too rapidly because many of the young people were very enthusiastic about the guns and about the berets. They knew little about the community programs that were really our reason for existing.
What possibilities did you see in the merger with the SNCC leadership, particularly merging?
And then we had stuff to do back there.
And how did you feel about Carmichael's strong national stance, particularly at that February 68 birthday rally, Freedom Week birthday rally?
Well, first I had a lot of respect for Rap Brown and Stokely Carmichael. SNCC carried the national and international support, and I felt that Stokely Carmichael could and the SNCC organization could better lead the Black Panther Party than even the executives in the party. Also, I thought it would be a good example set of Black unity and not attempting to compete for the center stage. At the time of the birthday party, SNCC was in a great transition period, and we felt that we could sway Carmichael's political stance with our popularity. Our popularity throughout the community. So we weren't too afraid of his posture on separation. We thought that we could, the community would ameliorate this particular kind of
that was
rhetoric.
Chairman Sekou's mentor.
Well, SNCC never really, they made a gesture to come to merge.
He was also
us,
married
but they
to
were
Marianne
very
McKeever.
paranoid. They thought that we had a trick up our sleeves. They thought that no organization would give up its leadership to them. And they would only come if we would make that compromise. But at the time that I was willing to do that, to make the compromise.
Well, although that there's a lot of controversy about Dr. Newton, that still does not take away his contributions to our history. And I'm putting that out there as a note of record.
Yeah, because most like to talk a lot of shit about Huey in his later days.
Yeah.
After Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated,
they went on a war path.
Police across the country were prepared and expecting a uprising in the community. And we felt that to protect the community from the kind of brutality that we anticipated, we would ask the community not to have an open rebellion. At the time, I was in the county jail waiting trial for murder of Oakland police officer and assault and attempted murder on another. And that I communicated with the party that we should not have any rebellion and encourage our chapters across the country to try to to contain the community from open resistance.
And what was the impact of King's death on the growth of the party?
People were very disillusioned with the possibilities of a peaceful transformation to civil rights and equality, and universally they were disillusioned with the civil rights movement. So by the thousands, they were joining up with our organizations, and organizations very much like ours, like the Republic of New Africa and our Revolutionary Action Movement, and many other Black organizations.
The Black
Who was Bobby Hutton, and why did his death affect the
Black Liberation Army.
We're going to change it. We're going to change this.
Yep. The Black Liberation Army was a splinter off of the Black Panther Party.
Yep, that's what what's his face was saying, Kwame.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
was Bobby Hutton?
And then also too.
Bobby Hutton was the first member of the Black Panther Party. He was recruited at the North Oakland Service Center in October '66. I believe he was 15 at the time. He was our first recruit, and we made him treasurer. And he was like my little brother that I never had. And he was the inspiration of the party, because the party was very youth oriented. And while he worked at the North Oakland Service Center, we tutored him and politicized him. And until he was killed, that I really couldn't imagine, not really imagine, any of our party members being murdered, even though that I knew that risk took place. I was in the county jail at the time of his murder. This was the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated. And after he was killed, and it was like that, I felt that anyone in the party, I felt the party vulnerable. So he was very loved as a youth in the party and as our first member.
Yes. They said it was 28 murders by Panther.
Food programs and the later survival programs within the Panther philosophy. Just talk about their place.
They said it was none but shootouts.
Well, the food program and the escorting the elderly to the to pick up their checks so they weren't mugged, giving care to them was the basis of our program. Our 10-point program was aimed at creating institutions in the community that really serve the community. And so these were alternative institutions that served, while those institutions that were supposed to answer most of the desires of the people in the community did not do it. So the food program, the housing program was to answer really the need of answer the need for a developing community.
How did the Panthers come about the communal lifestyle? And I mean, the style of the Panthers, the way they lived and the way they dressed, the way they ate. How did they come about that?
Again, I was very impressed with the Chinese Revolution and the Cultural Revolution that was going on in China at the time. And Mao Zedong, who's the chairman of the Communist Party in China, was experimenting with communal eating and communal living. This served us well because it was so difficult. Housing was so difficult in our community. So we felt if we pooled together that this would answer that question, especially for the core of the party.
Tell to the viewers, this is Huey P. Newell's last interview before his untimely demise.
Yeah, this is in 1989.
Seals, indictment, Cleaver is out of the country. What did you think? What did you think was going to happen?
Well, again, that I wanted to emphasize the
They said they kept
community
saying,
development
documentaries
aspect
we were watching, they kept saying he
of the party.
I'm like,
We were at the time that we were just creating a.
Okay, say that again, brother. I couldn't hear you.
We were planning
the
our
documentaries we
creation
were
of
watching, they
community
kept
school.
saying he died in '88.
We were having busing programs to prisons where we would pick up community people and take them to the various penal institutions.
Okay.
I felt that we should turn away from the arms because too much had been made of them, and I thought that the arms had served their purpose as far as being a catalyst to gain enthusiasm of the community.
22nd, 1989 is the date that he was killed.
December. What day?
Oh yeah, I was very well aware of that. Was one of the reasons that we didn't want the
August 22nd, 1989, he was killed.
Okay, whatever you just did
during the period of 68, 69, the federal government had
he was
declared
killed
all-out
August
war on the
22nd,
party.
1989, because I remember when I saw the headline of the LA Times.
Across the chapters, breaking into chapter headquarters across the country and filming weapons and saying that, look, they have guns. It was never mentioned that the guns were legal weapons. They were doing everything to make the community afraid of the party. And of course, you can't organize when people are afraid of you. So I was inclined to try to develop more local politics, to run local members for various offices, and develop our 10-point program, which was a housing, food, and health program.
Could you talk about the impact of King's death on the growth of the party, and again, how it may have affected New York and the eastern sectors more?
That's how I got involved in
growth may have affected those eastern sectors more than it did.
When Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, people became disillusioned, especially the youth, very disillusioned with the old civil rights movement. They felt that it wouldn't work, that it was proved that it wouldn't work by the assassination of Martin Luther King. And as a consequence, the growth was very heavy in the, especially all over, but even more so is more prominent in the on the East Coast. And it's probably because conditions on the East Coast, living conditions, survival conditions, were much more dreadful than even on the West Coast here, where the weather is much better.
And just the last question again is the use of profanity. And let's just stop in 68. I mean, what was your position, and how did that position differ from Cleaver's position in terms of the use of profanity?
Eldridge Cleaver was influenced by the dirty word movement that grew out of Mario Savio's free speech movement. And the dirty word movement, I didn't feel that in the Black community that it recruited anyone, it alienated people. For instance, in many churches that allowed us to use their facilities for breakfast for children program, we were ousted because of the profanity that was used by Eldridge Cleaver, and later Bobby Seale and David Hilliard followed this. They were impressed.
I met David Hilliard,
and I was against it. And matter of fact, that started to brew dissension in the party.
Okay.
They got a lot of water damage though. That's the thing.
How you communicated with Fred Hampton and where you saw
KK.
him rising. And
Oh man, is it cold?
I think that's it. Yep. There's like a minute left.
Could you talk about Fred Hampton and why he was such an effective leader and his rise within the party?
That's Chicago.
Fred Hampton was a very charismatic orator. And I think what's even more important that he had early training with the Southern Christian Leadership Council. He was tutored by Jesse Jackson. And he was on our central committee, and I saw him becoming a international leader. And I think that's one of the reasons that he was assassinated.
Okay, and bringing back a memory to me. I was in Chicago in 1969 in the summer, and as Dr. Newton was saying, is that the weather's better out in California, which it is. But the thing is, you have to remember is that Chicago, Illinois, it gets very cold in the winter months like it is now, but in the summer months, the humidity is every bit of 100%.
Yeah.
And
like
and
it
I
travels.
remember we,
It's
yes,
like,
sir. And then,
oh, go ahead.
and I have a distinctive memory of being in Washington Park. So when our man from Chicago comes on again, I ask him about Washington Park.
Okay.
And this was in the summer months. This was
Still
1969.
with us? You still in the building? Well, we about to
Okay.
close the shop because
All right.
we got to close it up at the 3.5 hour mark, and then go
All right,
right
so
in.
we got about 3 more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, and I remember at this event, we were visiting family members there. I remember a group of brothers standing on a stage with black jackets on. And I remember the speaker there was very charismatic. He was speaking at the microphone. He had 2 men on both his flanks, right side, left side. And I do not know, but I'm hoping that it was, in fact, Fred Hampton that I saw. Now, you have to keep in mind is that this is over almost 60 years ago, man. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay. But I do remember is that Chicago did have the Illinois chapter, and one of the people that you know of today who used to feed the children breakfast in Chicago was in fact Shaka Khan.
Yep, sure was. I think that's why my grandma loved her so much.
Yeah, you say. And then what had happened was Dr. King was assassinated in 1968. Okay, and between 68 to 70 is where you had which I call the Black Empowerment era, where people were embracing the red, black, and green. Hugh Masekela had a record out in 1968 called Brazen Brave.
Where would you end that period, Shabaka?
I would end that period, man, I would say, man, about 1974.
Okay, and then where would you start it?
I would start the Black Empowerment movement, man, definitely 1966 with the Black Panther Party.
So
because as you do...
prior to the Black Panther Party, no Black Empowerment era?
That would be the Civil Rights era.
Okay.
All right, and then also too is that you had a lot of Black Pride then and what have you. The RBG flags were everywhere. That's why I have RBG on my avatar that you see right there when we was doing Shabaka Black Experience Enhanced.
Got a minute, Shabaka. In a minute.
Okay, all right, and then I would have to say that it ended about 1974. Actually, it ended, man, with the birth of the disco era. It's because this is when these fucking culture vultures they start taking our music, like the Average White Band,
Yeah.
and KC
Yeah,
Sunshine Band, and
shout out
all
to
that.
Warren B. He covered that on his show earlier, but we got to wrap it up, Shabaka. So thank y'all for tuning in. Season 10, Episode 5, Shabaka's Black Experience Enhanced, President Day edition, Huey P. Newton edition, Huey Percy Newton Day edition. He would have been 50. Excuse me. He would have been 83 today. So R.I.P. and power to him. And join us in about 5 minutes for Frontline Black News. We'll see y'all then. Appreciate everybody that tapped in with us tonight.
All right, and I deeply apologize for being late on such a day.
The Outlaws tapped in, the People's Network, Forge and Thought, Twin, our hype man, crew again, the MD20, Kahari, the Jab Jamboree, or Jamboree.
Yeah, Jab Jamboree.
And then anybody that was peeking and not speaking. So peace, love, light, reparations, and separations, and Black empowerment. Join us in about 5 minutes for Frontline Black News, Season 4, Episode 47, Part 3. And then RBA. So peace from the Mile High Inc. and illegal migrant flooded city. See y'all shortly on the Frontline Black.
Okay, and then I got to go sit at a lunch counter and beg for a cup of coffee to stay the fuck up.
Oh, damn. Shabaka, you just woke up. You should be well rested. All right, let's do this.
All right.
You see?
Okay. Well, this is what